We are meeting after a certain gap through webinar to discuss India aiming for a circular economy. And this, of course, started from the Sustainable Development Goals that UN has chartered. There are 17 goals, and all of them, if you see that this has to be, of course, this agenda to be fulfilled by 2030, but it may take more time for all the countries to work on the sustainable goals together. There are no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure. There would be reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, which is very important, where this circular economy would come in very strongly. Responsible consumption and production. Climate action also is important for circular economy. Life below water. It's not only that we want to see the surface, what is happening, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, partnerships for the goals. So these are the Sustainable Development Goals as UN Charter. Under that, many of the UN SDGs that I talked about is connected to circular economy. And without that, of course, is impossible to satisfy this. And the Indian is a much more peculiar than any other countries, that we have a limited resources with 1.4 billion population. We are the third highest user of materials, and another 5 years time, by 2028, we will be the second highest user of materials. Materials mean every material that we think of, that we use everyday life. So with this huge amount of materials that you require, whether it's metal, non-metal, polymer, chemicals, whatever you take, we require a sustainability factor to be coming everywhere, because we have limited resources and huge number of population to be catered. And if you have to have zero hunger, no poverty, if you have to have sustainable cities, this is only the way to move forward, that whatever resources you are consuming, you reuse them, repair them, recycle them, and reduce the mining, reduce the use of water, and by recycling water, all other things. I'm just giving you certain examples. But what we thought, that in today's discussion, we will restrict ourselves to certain areas, not every areas that is we thought of, but we have almost taken all important areas that the circular economy can come in, starting from in the area of petroleum or petroleum crude and petroleum products, going forward to biogenic wastes or bio wastes, or the city wastes. Then, of course, with the chemical fertilizer, whatever the chemicals and fertilizer, whatever recycling is possible. Then we move to, the carbon that we are possible, how much we can recycle carbon or carbonaceous material. We cannot go on, using fossil fuel. If we can sequester carbon and make similar to fossil fuel and use them as a fuel, that is the best scenario that we are looking at. Of course, we had to decarbonize by 2070. I had our Honorable Prime Minister already talked about, or all the world leaders talked about, by 2050 we should decarbonize the world. So, but in the interim, arrangement should be to have CCUS in all the possible. And for India, it is much, much more important because coal is the source of energy primarily in India, which is we don't have to import. And that happens through a gasification route and all those, and then recycling the carbon. With that, we have a very specific topic which going to come through grassroots innovation and pioneers of circular economy. Because the circular economy, if you see, which is termed, has come because of UN SDGs, and many other countries are talking about today those who are extravagantly using and throwing things away. Now they have realized, but we realized last 2000 years, that is inbuilt in our blood, that we try to, recycle as much as many things possible in our daily household, recycling, repairing, refurbishing, as much things as possible, which is already there in India. But we were not doing it in very organized fashion. Now we need to work on a very organized way, and that is how we will reap more benefit than what our usual household family members were doing for ages. So that is how it's nothing new, and it is there in India, and we require more to be more aware of these facts and more do it more scientific way, more technical way, so that we we don't waste anything, and whatever we do, whatever waste we generate, we use it to the end. And there are a lot of industrial waste lying in many places, and so that, of course, we thought of taking up, especially the steel, which we will take up separately. And with this, I believe that it's now time for a deliberation. I now hand over it to Shri Shyam Bangji, who is our Secretary of the Trust. I would request him to take the program forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Basu. I would now invite our Chairman of the Trust, Mr. B.K. Chaturvedi, to say a few words as a beginning of the seminar, you can say inauguration of this conclave. As an introduction of Mr. Chaturvedi, I should say he has been a very well recognized person in the country. He started his career in Indian Administrative Service way back in 1966. He grew up the ladder, occupied several positions in the government of India, and ultimately rose to the highest level in the civil service when he was appointed the Cabinet Secretary to Government of India. He was also subsequently appointed as a member Planning Commission. He was also appointed as a member of the 13th Finance Commission. And as a part of government, he has handled several ministries, including finance, human resource development, petroleum and natural gas. And coming from a science background, he understands the subject very well. He has been connected with the subject very well. And he has played a major role in the policy making and various initiatives related to the reforms in the country. He has represented Government of India in UNICEF, UNDP, and of course, received recognition all over the world. So with those few words, I would invite Mr. Chaturvedi to please say a few words to inaugurate
hopefully
our
it will be
conclave.
stable for next few minutes. I don't know. Okay.
Please unmute yourself, Mr. Chaturvedi. Mr. Chairman, please unmute yourself. Okay.
All right.
You're okay now.
And you can hear me?
We can hear you now.
All right. So, first of all, let me thank you, Shyam, for this, your brief remarks. May I add my own word of welcome to that of yours and words of Professor Basu on this conclave. Needless to say that the issue involved is vital for the global economy and for countries like India. Today, the whole world is grappling with the problem of 1.5 degree increase in temperature, and how to see that this is attained. In spite of the Paris Accord and countries making commitments on that, it is now quite clear that it is going to be difficult. So countries are working out now various other measures. The scientists are working out various other policy interventions which can help in this. And the question of circular economy is one of them. How we can minimize the use of resources by recycling the waste, by recycling the existing materials, and using them again and again as much as we can, so that we are able to not use extra material which involves extra energy, extra carbons, extra emissions, and therefore increase in temperatures globally. I'm hopeful that the deliberations of this conference would be very, very useful for the policymakers, and we would very much like that when we have done with that, the policymakers take note of the deliberations, and this will be a step forward in seeing that our global economy, our global life is nearer this 1.5 degree target than what we would otherwise be. My best wishes for the deliberations, and I will look forward to all the views of various participants and those who are making presentations in the paper on this occasion. I thank them once again for their participation, and hope that their contribution would be adding enormous value to our fund of knowledge on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your words of wisdom. So we'll proceed further now, and because we have a long agenda, and I would request the speakers to take about 20 minutes to make their presentation, so that we are able to conclude within our time frame, and we have some time left towards the end of the session for some question answer, some interaction. I would request the speakers to stay on for the question answer session at the end. If somebody has to go out for any compulsory reason, maybe come back again towards the end so that you can join the question answer session. So we'll start with Dr. Ajit Sapre. He is a Group President R&D with Reliance Industries Limited. He has more than 40 years of industrial experience in oil and gas, refining, petrochemicals, renewable energy, sustainability, biotechnology, several kind of businesses. He has contributed to several innovative technology developments and commercialization. He has broad experience in varied technology areas, manufacturing, business, and corporate strategy. As education, he did his PhD from University of Delaware and MBA from Cornell University. He has published like 100 technical papers, and he has more than 50 US patents to his credit. So I invite Dr. Sapre to make his presentation.
Thank you for the kind introduction. I hope you can see my screen and hear me, because there's a big thunderstorm and my bandwidth is low. So please say you can hear me, then I can continue.
We can see your screen slides very well. Voice is though a little feeble, but we are able to hear you.
All right, I'll speak loudly. Yeah. So I will give you technology development for a circular economy, my perspective. This will be a fast-paced presentation with overload. So look at the tagline and the get most out of it. This is just a disclaimer from my lawyers saying that whatever I'm presenting are my personal reflect Reliance's business strategy. So let me begin as pointed out the roof circular. One of the critical elements for fighting climate change, and many people say that we're not going to reach 1.5 degrees, probably will go higher. The CO2 concentration in atmosphere, everyone knows, is increasing as shown in the top right chart. The frequency and severity of weather-related events are also increasing as shown on the top left. In the Indian context, our glaciers are receding, and India is at the risk of flooding in coastal cities and losing its major rivers, source of drinking water irrigation for more than 1 billion people, if we were to exceed these temperature limits. And certainly the Ukraine-Russia war is bringing coal back, and that's not going to help us. So anyway, we do our best to figure out how do we do it. So here's an outline of my presentation. I'm going to talk quite a bit about plastic recycling, talk a bit about the biodegradable plastics.
We lost your voice.
We are waiting for somebody.
No, Mr. Ajit Sapre was speaking, and somehow he has a problem of connectivity. He didn't have the internet. The internet connection has failed, so he was working from his telephone. And I think there's a thunderstorm there. We'll wait for a couple of minutes, and otherwise we'll proceed with the other ones next one.
We can go to the next speaker after waiting, and then we can.
Yeah, just a couple of minutes and we'll go to the next speaker otherwise. Okay, we'll go to the next speaker and we can come back to Dr. Sapre later again. So Ruchi Agrawal, are you ready? Dr. Ruchi Agrawal?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, sir, I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just say a few words to introduce yourself. Dr. Ruchi Agrawal is a scientist at the TERI. She's adjunct faculty at the university, TERI SS University, and holds affiliated position in the Deakin University, Australia. She is among the few scientists who are working in the area of decarbonization and sustainable energy, sustainable development via circular economy approach. Her research in TERI is directed towards exploitation of innovative and sustainable bioresources and development of renewable biopolymers, bio-based materials, and chemicals via circular economy approach. Her group is actively working towards finding the smart next generation seed coating and fertilizer delivery systems. She has been honored with the prestigious Young Scientist Governor Award in 2016. So with those few words, I request Dr. Agrawal to please make a presentation.
Thank you, sir, for the kind remarks. So, and I would also like, first I'll share my presentation. Give me a moment, please. So there is only one planet, yet by 2050, the world will be using like we have three. So traditionally, we are from an Indian economy where we used to recycle whatever we used to produce, and we used to repurpose, recycle, and reuse whatever we used to get. It is like back in 1990s, like this was like, we never heard of circular economy, but this was a practice our old grandmothers and mothers used to follow. So so this is something like we need to adopt at this moment without any weight, and so that we can actually refurbish everything which we have taken from the nature, and we can give it back to the nature. So good morning, everyone. I'm Ruchi Agrawal from TERI, and I have already been introduced. So I'll move to the presentation now. I'm not able to move my slides. Yeah, so I'll start with the current recycling levels of various elements. These are not the carbon things, but yeah, this is something like which is also at stake, and we should also consider this. So this is by Professor James Clark, Green Chemistry from the University of York. He has actually looked at the profile of various elements in the periodic table, and from there, it was concluded like we are losing the resources of all these elements at a very fast pace, and because of the leakage in the recycling thing, and we are not able to recycle the back sources of these elements. So, and these are few materials that could not be recycled at a scale, and we will be losing very soon. It includes gold, silver, indium, iridium, tungsten, and many other metals. So this does not hold true only for the metals. It also holds correct for the food, fuel, fertilizers, polymers, and various other categories. And supplies of key resources are very limited, while recycling rates for many remain question for us. So there are 5 major risks which are of highest urgency, and it includes the water supply crisis, the food shortage crisis, rising emissions, extreme volatility in energy and agriculture prices. And as per the World Resources Institute, I think energy is the major GHG profile is dominated by the energy sector, followed by the agriculture, industry, and the waste. So there are multiple issues, which includes the linear economy and the waste generation issues. Apart from that, we have these greenhouse gas emissions, which should be taken very seriously by the research communities and the policymakers. So moving ahead, so pledging climate action is not enough. We need to move the talk, and companies, there has been an avalanche of corporate commitments for the circular economy management, and many companies are talking about it, but we need an action now, and we need actors who can actually work for reviving this back again to the nature. Companies have set net zero targets with science-based reduction tools as milestones, but over 60% have either set their targets far into the future, or they have no clear target dates. So we need some time-based commitments so that we can actually furnish some results at the end, instead of only talking about the climate neutrality and carbon negative environment. So when we talk about the greenhouse gas emissions, actually it is majorly it is the carbon which actually take over the most of the portion of it, and the carbon is a main concern for this. So currently we have only CCS or BECCS, which is bioenergy based carbon capture and storage solutions, which are actively running around the globe, and they are I think we have multiple plants, like we have 35 commercial plants working using the CCS or CCUS. CCS is carbon capture and storage, and CCUS is carbon capture and utilization of that and sequestration. So basically we have 35 commercial units having the capacity of almost 45 metric tons of CO2 capture per year, and which is far behind the expectations, and we are running behind. So we need to either increase the number of facilities which is in the plan, but it will take far more time as expected. Similarly, the BECCS route is also lagging behind, because at this moment we are only able to CO2, we are able to capture carbon dioxide only from the first generation bioethanol industries, and it is not actually being applied to other industries. And we are only able to capture almost 2 metric tons of biogenic carbon dioxide, and it is against the target by 40, which is 40 metric ton of CO2 per year by 2030, and by 2050 it is huge. So this is something which is very serious and should be considered. And further, there are many drawbacks related to carbon capture and storage, like it is very expensive technology. A plant with CCS uses more fuel than the one without. And if we compare, it could also vary based on the type of the industries. Fertilizer industries, for example, they produce carbon dioxide separately. So for those industries, the carbon capture cost is quite less. But for the cement industries, manufacturing industries, and many other industries, they do not do the thing in the same manner. So the cost is quite high. Similarly, for the storage part, apart from the capture thing, so if we consider the storage of carbon, so that if we have carbon leakage issues, so and if we do not monitor the sites and the if it is not properly planned, again there are some chances of leakage there. So it is in the reports, and yeah. So I think we should think of something else apart from this. This can go in parallel, but we need to think for other options where we can actually capture carbon dioxide before it is emitted into the atmosphere. So there are solutions. Many researchers are working on this, apart from the policymakers. So as per the Circular Economy Action Plan, many researchers are working, and on the right side, the graph shows the growth in the publications and the patents, where they are proposing the solutions for circular economy and how we can actually use the waste to for sustainable and innovative products. So there are 4 core themes by the CEAP, the Circular Economy Action Plan 2020, which suggests 4 major criteria for the coming action plan. And it is the creation of, or the production of sustainable products, more customer-centric policy and product value chain actions to empower consumers, focus on the lifetime of the products, and ensuring the less waste. And recently, there were many reports where it has been found like the customer is also important when we consider, when we talk about the circular economy, because ultimately these are the consumers, and if they have the acceptance for the sustainable products, then only these can go into the market. So because till now the consumers actually look, they are playing very passive role, or they are not very updated about the benefits of these sustainable products. So they should also come actively in the picture, and they should be given all the highlights about the particular product. The label should actually describe everything about it. So I'll not go into the detail of this, and the attractiveness of these circular models would be increasing if the resource prices will keep on increasing, or the cost of establishing the necessary reverse cycle declines. So yeah, as I said, so 45% of carbon emissions could be reduced using the renewable energy or energy efficiency tools. But for remaining 55%, we need circular economy to come into picture. And it can actually help in the decarbonization efforts and for net negative emissions as well. So one such material is the stubble or the agro waste, which are being burned across the country and across the world. And these are useful resources, as these two contain quite good amount of nutrients. These are rich in carbohydrates, lignin, silicas, and apart from these, they also contain good amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur. And if these are burnt, so these all we are actually losing all these nutrients. Apart from these, we are releasing the toxic gases into the environment, which are posing hazards for the human health. So governments and regulatory bodies around the globe are endorsing biogenic carbon and putting in place incentives for companies to favor its use. And I think we should look for, and we should dream for a world where we can actually capture all this carbon from these resources before it becomes toxic to us. So one such resource is the agro waste. And as I talked, this is quite a repetition of which I have already described, and it can help in reducing the total carbon footprint. And I will not talk about this in detail. This is very much known to all of us here, but this could be a promising resource based on the various diverse components within it. So circular economy, if we talk about the agriculture sector, these are some solutions which we at TERI are looking for further, and we are also looking with the angle of research and posing the solutions. So first is the composting as an affordable alternative to chemical fertilizers. So these residues could easily be converted to the compost, but yeah, so we are at a scale of TRL level 2. So maybe we can go further. And second is the co-firing of biomass and thermal plants. So although we are all talking about renewable sources and everything, but it has been widely reported, like we cannot actually say like we will be dependent on thermal plants or the coal power plants as well. So we cannot completely shift to renewable energy source. So for this, because these are the main culprits of greenhouse gas emissions apart from other industrial and vehicles based pollution. So we need to, this is a solution, we can co-fire the biomass in the thermal plants. Although there are multiple issues with this thing, like biomass is actually fibrous in nature, so there are issues in co-milling. It has some moisture, so it poses issues like slagging and fouling. And similarly, because of chlorine and some other elements in it, like sodium and chlorine, so we need to go for a specific pre-treatments before mixing it in with the coal and boil, use it in the thermal plants. So this is something like which is very promising. At present, I think 10% blending is in work, is actually being implemented, but we have to go beyond it to increase the circular economy. Next is the municipal solid waste pallets. These again have these are municipal solid waste is I think it is also a menace across the globe, and it has components like paper, polythenes and everything. So if these could be used and converted to and mixed with the thermal plants in the coal system, so it could be also beneficial. And if we mix the syngas, which is produced from the agro residues, it can be co-fired with the coal in the thermal plants. Biomass fly ash, which is the end product of the thermal plants, if it is mixed with cement, it can there are many reports on this, so then it can be remarkable. And I think because it has some potash and calcium content, so the reports, scientific reports actually indicate that they have given better results as compared to the cement. Promoting agriculture waste to provide energy, which could be biochar, biogas, biofuels. We have multiple commercial plants coming up on second generation bioethanol technology. So I think fingers crossed for that, and we can have some beneficial results. We can see some results there. Biodegradable polymers. This is something we are also working at TERI, and I'll be showing some of the data there. As a soil improver, eco-friendly greenhousing, like we can use algae, biomasses and other things as eco-friendly greenhousing or the green parks. As animal feed and nutrient recovery, nutrients are very important for the plants. We know the micronutrients and macronutrients, and because some of the biomass include these elements, so we can actually extract these elements if possible. So these are various options for circular economy. And this is from the biogenic carbon, which is agriculture waste. We are working on nanofibers, nanocrystals, nanobiochar, and these are the various applications of all these products. These could be used in the nanofibers, particularly could be used for seed coating, as nano formulations, as nano carrier system for fertilizer deliveries, nanoflocculants, and in the membrane systems, and many others. And this is from the inorganic parts, because inorganic part is rich in various elements. So we can actually derive various silicates, calcium, magnesium based products from there. And these are beneficial as insecticidal and fungicidal formulations as well.
Can you conclude now, please?
Yeah, sir, I'll do. So this is some of the work which we are carrying out here. And we have various polymers or the green polymers, which all are derived from the waste materials. And these could be used for the wastewater treatment and the food packaging. And these are some agriculture nutrients, which include some fertilizers, pesticides and agrochemicals. These are all derived from the waste materials of various industries. And the right one shows the circular economy from the silk waste industry, where we have synthesized some hybrid nanofibers, nanoflowers for the wastewater treatment and for the antibiotic remediation. And this is some hydrogel for the seed coating. So I'll conclude, I think I will not go in deep. So with the final words, the circular economy model is far more complex than the linear approach and requires a global workforce that is educated and able enough to use it and improve upon the current mechanism of the model to make it as efficient and environmentally friendly as possible. And the circular economy can be a model that can help save the planet. However, it cannot be seen in isolation. Thank you. So if there are any queries, so I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruchi. And as I requested earlier, I would like you to stay on till the end so that we can get the question answer session, so we can answer some of those questions. So the presentation is interesting, how we connect the industry and the agriculture sector to really achieve that circular economy concept that we are talking about. So thank you so much. We invite Dr. Ajit Sapre, are you back there?
Yeah, I'm back. I also sent a presentation to your organizers in case my bandwidth goes out again, but I can go right now and start with the third slide if you want.
Yeah, please go ahead in that case.
Can you see my slides?
Yeah, we can see them.
Can you hear me now? All right.
We can hear you also better.
Yeah, so this is where we stopped, where I was going to talk about the various subjects like plastic recycling, biodegradable plastics, green hydrogen and green oil, and talk a bit about the climate smart agriculture. We look at the fundamentals of science, engineering, and economics and integration of it, some common sense. Obviously, we're taken to the heart, our Dhirubhai Ambani's quote saying our dreams have to be bigger, ambitions higher, commitment deeper, efforts greater. And certainly a lot of the ideas you will hear about probably will not hear somewhere else. So be patient with me because some of the things I'm going to talk about are completely out of the box. So let me begin. As the last speaker talked about, we need to move from a linear economy, which is essentially take, make, and dispose, to circular economy, which is essentially minimize, recycle, and reuse. And certainly our needs are rising, our resources are limited. So we need to convert all the waste into resource. So I'll talk about primarily three wastes, plastic waste, municipal solid waste, and agri waste. And those are the fundamental things of the circular economy, the way I see it, that can provide us some scale that we need to meet our needs. So let me begin with the plastics. The plastic demand is going to continue to increase as shown on the top right-hand side of the chart. And so, if you think about it, plastic is a very useful material. So we need to fight pollution, not plastics per se. It makes our daily life more comfortable. However, misuse causes severe environmental damage. So certainly in the concept of circular economy, we need to collect our plastics, recycle them back, and reuse them. And we are founding members of Alliance to End Plastic Waste. We are committed to spend more than $1.5 billion over the next few years. And our approach has been to innovate, collaborate, and educate. This is a tremendous value business opportunity. McKinsey puts in value in the close to a $40 to $70 billion range. This is something we need to get serious about. As you may know, India is probably one of the best shining solutions when it comes to 80% of the PET bottles being recycled, and we outperform Japan, Europe, and US. It's primarily because it provides an earning opportunity for downtrodden who collect them, who recycle, and then they bring it back. Reliance recycles more than 2 billion PET bottles regularly, and we are trying to increase that number even further. And essentially, we have a technology to convert the plastic bottles into a high quality clothing fiber, if you will, and those are several brands like Relpet, R-Elan, and R-Elan Gold is actually a fashionable designer clothing type of material. We also formed a partnership with Raymond, one of the high-end clothing stores, if you will, with our EcoVera fibers that essentially are coming from the plastic bottles. So certainly this is something we need to replicate for other plastics. So we are committed to do this for our polyethylene and polypropylene. So in fact, all our plastics will be recycled back as much as possible. We are also developed a PBAT, a biodegradable polymer that I'll talk about a little bit later. And since Indian government has mandated now 8% plastic waste in road construction, that is also something we're actively pursuing. So our goal of circular economy is a part and parcel of reaching our net zero target by 2035. There are many other things we're doing, but this is one component of it. Now, if you talk about the plastic waste, it's really a mixed plastic waste, because if you have unique plastics like polypropylene, polyethylene, if they're segregated, they're easy to recycle. The problem is with the mixed plastics, especially with the packaging, multi-layer packaging with aluminum layers. So what we have developed is a unique catalytic technology with a unique reactor design. And we are in the process of commercializing. It has been done at a large scale demo now. And you can see the use of our catalyst actually improves the oil yield. As you can see from the top right pictures in those two beakers, there are many boutique thermal catalytic processes to convert plastic waste, but none of them can handle mixed plastic waste without cleanup. So we have a unique technology that can take any mixed plastic waste, and even the garbage that comes with it, you don't need to clean up. Our catalyst takes care of it. The oil that we make, we can reprocess it to make the plastics back, thus closing the loop. It's a very efficient, continuous, and a scalable technology, and this will make a big impact in this area of taking the plastic waste and converting it to useful value products. Now, we have tested all kinds of different plastics, both as an individual plastic, as a mixed plastic, and so we are quite comfortable that we can take any waste that comes along in this particular reactor technology. So we're quite bullish about this. Now, let me talk a little bit about the biodegradable plastics. All plastics can be categorized into these 4 buckets, whether they are fossil-based or they are bio-based. If they are biodegradable or they are not. All the plastics that we consume today are actually in the bottom left quadrant of this particular chart. And we've been focusing quite a bit as an R&D organization to develop biodegradable plastics. There are 2 biodegradable plastics that we're working on. One is a PBAT that is ready to commercialization. And in fact, it's in the Reliance retail stores. I'll talk about in the next chart. The PHA technology, which is both biodegradable and bio-based, is still in the early stages, and you'll hear about it down the road. So let me talk about PBAT. It's a commercial product now, so it's our own technology, and we develop many products like packaging films and packaging net bags, which Reliance retail store has it now, and we are commercializing at large scale, so it's available to a broader market for packaging goods. Packaging is one of the critical items when it comes to plastic waste, and there's a lot of effort going on in developing other biodegradable products as well, as outlined on the right-hand side of this chart. And our biodegradable plastic meets all the ASTM and the world standards. This is going to be available in large scale to consumers in India very soon. So our message on the plastic circular economy is very simple: reduce, reuse, recycle, and recover, as we are redesigning the packaging to minimize the waste. And so we need to come together to help India in the circular plastic economy. So let me move on from the plastics and talk about agricultural waste that was also spoken by the earlier speaker. And certainly in Northern India in particular, we burn the agri-residues, and certainly that is causing a pollution challenges in northern cities like Delhi. So if you can convert this agricultural waste to a valuable product, it not only is good for environment, but also good for the farmers that will put significant amount of money in their pockets. So it's really another beautiful waste to wealth technology that solves multiple problems. And so what we have developed is actually unique. What I have said, invented a new catalyst technology. It's called novel migratory solid-solid catalysis. So we're actually using solids to gasify other solids. For example, biomass or even coal. With high ash coal, we can do this as well. It's a dual fluid bed system. And essentially the catalyst runs around while you're gasifying the biomass, if you will. We also produce significantly higher quantities of hydrogen because essentially steam gasification. And we are burning the coke on the catalyst that is providing the heat. This is more like an FCC process. This is being scaled up, and now we are in the process of building a fairly large demo plant. And since we use air to clean up the catalyst and provide the heat for the reaction, we don't need any air separation plant or oxygen plant. So our CapEx is 40% lower. Our OpEx is also 40% lower compared to all thermal gasifiers which are being pursued by various agencies in India. At the end of the day, we will be pursuing renewable hydrogen, which is the same as green hydrogen because it's coming from a biogenic source. And the most important part is that our catalyst actually removes all the tar. It converts all the tar to syngas. So we have no tar formation, which is a peculiar problem for all biomass-based gasifiers. So we are really excited about this. And most important thing is that the cost of hydrogen production from this process, we are projecting at a commercial scale to be same as SMR. So there is a zero green premium for this technology. And we are really excited about this. This can add a significant value to the Indian economy. Moving on, the other waste is really municipal solid waste or all kinds of organic waste, which is whether it is a sewage treatment plant waste, any organic waste. So my view is very simple. All energy that we consume comes from sunlight. So the agricultural waste, the municipal solid waste is nothing but old sun that got captured and then finally ended up as a waste. Now we have technology that we'll talk about in the next slide, but if we convert all the municipal solid waste that is in India and we convert that to, for example, the bio oil and convert that to aviation fuel, that will meet the India's need for the aviation fuel. And if you look at all the municipal solid waste and STP waste and other waste, organic waste I'm talking about, and if you convert that to aviation fuel, it could meet almost 80% of the aviation fuel need in the world. But by the way, the green oil I produce in my mind is also stored energy. What is oil at the end of the day? It's nothing like a battery, and I'll talk about that a bit more later in the context of electrification. But anyway, the technology we have developed is called catalytic hydrothermal liquefaction. And the process is very simple as shown in the diagram at the top. The majority of the product is green oil. We make a little bit of a biochar and a little bit of a purge aqueous stream that actually has a nitrogen and phosphorus. So both these components, biochar and the aqueous stream, are actually fertilizer components. We have tested all kinds of feedstock as listed on the left-hand side, MSW, agri waste, lignin, dairy waste, you name it, including the sewage treatment plant waste as well. The size of the plant is shown at the bottom. So you can see the scale, it's a fairly large scale plant. And so I think this is something we are pursuing. And in my mind, this is a much better technology to convert any waste to oil. And I'm comparing the RCAT HTL that we call this particular technology for various feedstock, including municipal solid waste, as shown from the second from the right column. So what I'm comparing here is that the amount of product that we make per ton of feed is the highest compared to all other technologies for the RCAT HTL. So from a resource efficiency perspective, for a country like us, we need to be more cognizant of the fact that why not convert our residues to a stable oil? And to me, oil is the most valuable commodity compared to, say, example, 2G bioethanol or bio-CNG that, with the government subsidies being pursued, it has some value. But to me, it is not as competitive as compared to RCAT HTL. One of the challenges we have is that the government of India has a policy for the finished product like aviation fuel or for a biodiesel, but not for a bio crude or a bio oil that I will make out of this. But anyway, at today's crude oil prices, our oil is, we produce oil at about $50 a barrel. So, and you have to understand it's a green oil, so there's a premium oil. And so to me, I'm of the opinion we should convert everything to oil and forget about all these other things, because oil can be stored, can be transported, and then already infrastructure exists. And I'll talk a little bit about it in the context of climate change and why we need to electrify and what is the use of oil if you want to make electricity as well. But anyway, it's a great technology and I'm quite excited about it. And this is another way to convert our waste to value. Now I'll talk about CO2 as a resource and a circular economy for CO2. I've talked about this before, but we have a unique technology and the world leader in this. I'm quite proud of what we have done. We can convert the CO2 with sunlight using algae as a biological platform. And we have done this at a very large scale. We have a 20-acre production today within a 60-acre facility. And we have actually developed all this technology in-house in India. And we put a lot of effort in understanding photosynthesis. I'll talk a little bit about that. But at the end of the day, I can make a crude oil or a green oil, a renewable oil, at about $128 a barrel without any subsidy. And with the subsidies available in the US and Europe, I can make it happen at $60 a barrel. And by the way, it's a green crude. So this is a tremendous opportunity. Now, certainly in India, we have no such credits for green oil, whether it is for algae or whether it is for municipal solid waste I talked about. But this is something, this is an Indian technology developed here in India by Indians and is a leading technology in the world, and we should be proud of this. So hopefully, this is something will happen as down the road, the need for energy security becomes critical. And at the end of the day, everything comes from sunlight. So let me talk about electrification and talk why the oil is so valuable. And what I'm talking about here is at the end of the day, we're putting a lot of solar capacity. And once the intermittent electricity on our grid goes beyond 30%, we need to stabilize it. And a lot of people are talking about hydrogen and batteries. And they're okay for a short duration, for small time. But I've been running solar algae ponds for 6 years in Jamnagar. I know what happens in rainy season. And to be honest with you, in the world, this is an unsolved problem. Most people are talking about storage for 3 days or something of that order. If I look at my own data of algae production in Jamnagar, for instance, I need several days of storage. I'm talking about weeks, not few days. But anyway, what I'm comparing here is that I'm going to take this green oil from algae and I'm going to burn it to make electricity. The technology exists for this. Nothing has to be done. And I'm talking about at various crude oil prices from $100 to $200 a barrel. And I say 5 gigawatt hour daily storage need from a 5 gigawatt solar plant. And I need to provide 24/7 electricity. So here are the 2 examples I'm giving for 7 days and 3 days. And I'm comparing at the last column, what is the cost of battery has to come down to compete even with a $200 a barrel oil if I want to store electrical energy for multiple days. Now you think about it, we are talking about using solar energy to make hydrogen, ammonia, and most of our plants today, we produce hydrogen, we use it. Ammonia plant needs 500 tons per day. And if you want to store it for say 15 days, it's a huge amount of storage. Would you store electricity or would you storage hydrogen and ammonia? In my mind, the best thing to do is to store oil, burn it as electricity and make whatever you want, hydrogen, ammonia, whatever the thing is of the flavor of the day. And to me, if I convert that oil from municipal solid waste at $50 a barrel, the battery cost will have to come down by another factor of 2 compared to this column at the last in this table. And by the way, I have also a technology developed where I can integrate solar and algae together. So I can use the same land for algae at the bottom and PV on the top. In fact, our photosynthetic kinetics suggest if I do that, my algal productivity will go up. So anyway, some of these are unique ideas and nobody else in the world is talking about it. I thought I'd at least start presenting it. But this is something that will actually produce a breakthrough and a competitive position for India at large. So anyway, let me move on because most people may think, oh, this is something really weird. Nobody's talking about it. But one other thing we did out of this whole algae business is that we built a capacity and capability for genetically modifying microorganisms using CRISPR technology. So in my mind, I can take this organism that actually consumes CO2 using photons, and I can make any product. In fact, all the products listed on this table, I'm making them today from carbon dioxide. And I'll talk in the next slide in the context of agriculture, in the context of the nutrient and the food need of India. So to me, the synthetic biology is going to be the most critical for this coming century. I believe this is century of biology, especially with the climate change. Without synthetic biology, we will not be able to meet many of our needs. So let me talk about what we have done. So for example, this is something we are scaling it up at a fairly large scale because the amount of money we can make selling algae as a protein is far more than the oil. Oil itself has a very high value, as I talked about. But we have actually produced 2 different algae strains. One is really non-GMO algae, which is we call super protein. And the GMO algae is actually iron fortified protein, equivalent to say what Impossible Burger is doing in the US. And so we have actually gone through the regulatory process, and it's a category 5 safe for human consumption, our proteins are. And by the way, when I make these proteins, I'm consuming CO2. Unlike, say, for example, meat, when you produce, the animal husbandry itself is actually producing a lot of CO2. So I'm quite excited about this. This is something that could actually help India meet its hunger and most importantly, nutrition gap. India by itself being a vegetarian food diet is iron deficient. And considering the iron protein that we are producing is significantly more bioavailable than the iron pills that you will get. I also made all kinds of variety of biomaterials. I've given you an example of a very high strength spider silk. So with synthetic biology, with the CRISPR technology, we can convert CO2 to many of these products which are needed for human consumption and make the whole world far more sustainable with CO2 as a resource, as a feedstock, if you will. So let me move on. The other thing we learned quite a bit, and that's why we are so much productive in the algae, is understanding of photosynthesis from first principles. And to be blunt with you, photosynthesis is the basis of all life on planet Earth. Without photosynthesis, we would not survive. It's not just the food, but everything we do today has to do with the photosynthesis. And so our understanding of that, we've been translating that to improve productivity. Also, we understand which genes are expressed when, and something we can use genetically modified for improving productivity, not just of algae, but also of agriculture, if you will. And by the way, the Indian government has now given approval for CRISPR for agriculture. So certainly, if I think in the future for agriculture, we can transform our agriculture with both advances in biological technologies like CRISPR. We can make a drought resistance or a flood resistance or remove toxins, all kinds of things we can do with the CRISPR technology for agriculture. And certainly the digital technology. And here I'm specifically talking about hyperspectral imaging, because that's something we use for algae. And this gives you far greater information early on about, not just using the drones with the simple cameras, but the hyperspectral imaging drones can give you significant advanced warning on crop failure, use of fertilizer, so on and so forth. But certainly, if you combine all these ideas, I kind of pictorially shown on the top left chart, value creation from what I call integrated agriculture, a climate smart agriculture. We're using every component of it. Some of it I did talk about before, where I can take the residues, convert it to oil. I can make certain products which are actually valuable as a fertilizer, so on and so forth. So certainly this is the way we need to think about, and we need to say we want to lead the world, not just follow the world. And this is something really dear to me, because I have a lot of partnerships in India. And what I think I lack sometimes is that we don't have the multidisciplinary networks who can work end to end with a leadership mindset. And I really took it to my heart. Prime Minister Modi's, one of the statements he made for the 75th Independent Day was that we have to leave our servitude mindset. We need to lead the world. We just cannot be the followers. So I'll just talk about the contrast in the two bottom pictures. The left picture, actually there is no fence at all. It's just the gate. And you can see all the sheep are following the leader. This is not the way. This is the trap thinking that if somebody else has done in the world, we should follow. I'm not saying don't follow it, but have some mindset of your own and come and think about bright ideas that we can actually lead the world and make India a better place from a technological perspective, and have a different kind of a mindset. So, break away from the flock. That would be my simple message, at least to the young people who may be listening. In my mind, it's very simple. The world is changing in many different ways. Whether it's geopolitics, whether it's the fourth industrial revolution, or it's a climate change. And in my mind, the fast followers may never catch up with first movers when major disruptions occur. This is a great opportunity for us. India has missed all three previous industrial revolutions. Let's not miss this one. And it is not about digital. It's all about integrated thinking about digital, biological, and essentially physical world. And that's, if we do it effectively, we could lead the world. And certainly in India, we are very weak in translational research when it comes to high capital intensive industries. And certainly whether it is circular economy or the energy transition or net zero, these are very, very high capital intensive ventures. So we need to think about how do we take our collective ingenuity in today's boundaryless world and lead the world, not just be a follower. So we need a mindset change at all levels. And I think I talked quite a bit about this in my speeches. So I'll also again communicate this to you one more time. When the major disruptions are happening, what matters is inventions. To me, innovation is implementation of innovation, whether they're yours or somebody else's. But your inventions would give you a competitive advantage for a long time to come. So why not invent in India before you make in India? In India should be inventions, and innovation is only for implementation, not imitation. So to me, a science is for solution, technology is for transformation, and implementation for societal impact here in India. So for our population to climb the ladder of prosperity in the era of net zero or circular economy, we need to think differently. Just think about what Mahatma Gandhi said. He would say he would prize every invention of science made for the benefit of all. So why not invent here in India and then implement and make in India? That would be my simple message. And here's a perfect opportunity. I gave you a few glimpses of technologies we have developed, and we're willing to collaborate because this is something one needs to look at in a broader community sense that how are we going to do it? So here we need government, academia, industry, and population at large to collaborate and cooperate and make some of these things happen here in India. So anyway, this is my last slide. We do need to protect our earth because we are at a pretty much a tipping point. We may argue about 1 degree, 1.5 degrees. To be blunt with you, all the economic models I have seen and all the climate predictions I have seen since 1990, we are headed for more than 2.5 degrees, easy. And if you consider what's happening with the Ukraine-Russia war and everything else that's going around in Europe, for instance, same thing is happening in the rest of the world as well. So although we may hopefully think we will reach 1.5 degrees, I have no such assurance. So we need to be prepared for adaptation. And I'll leave this one simple message. Adaptation is actually synthetic biology. So, you could read into Mahatma Gandhi's other quote, the world has enough for everyone's needs, but not everyone's greed. And so I think the needs and the greeds, I'm not so sure there will actually be an equilibrium in any time in the near future with all the geopolitical upheaval that's going on. So India needs to lead through inventions and innovation. We need to discover, develop, deploy, and deliver value here in India. So that's my simple message. I hope you got something useful out of it. If not, it was great giving some ideas that people can think about and progress them further. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sapre. A very comprehensive presentation and the great work being done by Reliance in various areas and how they can be brought in the practice. We have to see, I'm sure country would certainly benefit from the approach that you have taken. I would request you to stay till the end so that you can participate in the question answer session. In the meantime, we'll proceed with the next speaker, Dr. Anjan Ray. Dr. Anjan Ray, he did his PhD in chemistry from University of Pennsylvania, and he has worked with various chemical and allied industries for 25 years. And now currently he is the director of CSIR-Institute of Petroleum, Dehradun, and also holds the additional charge of CSIR Central Building Research Institute at Ruchi. Dr. Ray's professional interests have spanned fields as diverse as surfactants, lubricants, oleochemicals, etc. He is recipient of the Indian Federation of Green Energy Jury Choice Award for Outstanding Green Energy Activist in 2021. And he has been felicitated with the Uttarakhand Ratnashri Award. So I invite Dr. Ray to share his presentation, please. And we try and limit it to 20 minutes just to manage our time, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bang, Mr. B.K. Chaturvedi, Dr. Ajit Sapre, Dr. Basu, other distinguished fellow speakers and members of the LKMT Trust, and audience members, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, first of all, for this opportunity. Dr. Sapre is in some ways a tough act to follow, and in some ways he makes life very easy for people like us who come after him, because we can draw upon his reference points and the insights that he has offered us. I'm going to talk about something very mundane compared to the sublime synthetic biology and advanced catalysis that he spoke about. I will talk about what is under our nose, but we miss it in the context of climate change mitigation and circular economy, which is lubricants. We are already aware all too acutely of the issues around sustainability. Rather than going through the definitions, I will simply focus you on the statement of Professor Eftichios Tsatsitakis of the University of Macedonia in Greece 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, he identified overconsumption, partially linked to population increase, but partially linked to the greed that Dr. Sapre talked about, as a fundamental underlying cause of environmental issues. Let me try to translate that into something we engineers and physicists understand relatively easily. Let's talk about machine efficiency. Machine efficiency is nothing but the energy that I put into a machine relative to the work that I take out of it. So the output work divided by the input energy is my efficiency. And at least by all known theories, it can never really be equal to 1. I will always lose something in the operation of a machine converting energy to work. Now, what does that mean in the context of overconsumption? Everything we do, whether it is in supplying primary energy, extracting ores or non-metallic minerals or water or anything else, all of these extractions require machines to operate them. And we can already see that in the last 115 years, there is a certain rate at which population has grown, which is the black line. But with the exception of food, interestingly, which again, Dr. Sapre talked about, everything else has grown faster than population. So either all population needs were not being adequately met in the year 1900, and this year, or 2015 onwards, there has been increased demand in different parameters that has improved the ability to meet needs. But on the other hand, if I look at another factor called the Gini coefficient, it will show you that actually the world has become somewhat more skewed than in 1900. The Gini coefficient is a measure of inequality economically. Countries that have a Gini coefficient of 0.35 or more have a skewed distribution. Gini coefficient 1 would mean that one person in the country has all the wealth and everybody else is 0. And a Gini coefficient tending to 0 would mean everybody has the same wealth. So it is interesting that a country like India is exactly at 0.35. Most countries that were colonized at some point in their histories are higher than 0.35. And those which were under 0.35 were usually the colonizers at some point in history. So you can see immediately that there is some kind of a correlation between resource distribution and the economic history of colonization. Anyway, we cannot go back and reverse that. So going back to what Dr. Sapre said, what can I do to re-examine the way we operate today? Obviously, if you're over-consuming, we are overusing machines. In fact, each Google search consumes roughly 1 minute of a low power LED bulb. So considering how many millions, possibly billions of people are Google searching every day, imagine how much energy is going just to satisfy our constant desire for data and information on the internet. I would argue that the old-fashioned way of going to a library and opening a book would have taken much less. We already know that machines give you less than 100% efficiency. So every machine is taking in energy and wasting some of it. So every machine is a contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. And primarily it does in 2 ways. One is the frictional losses, the other is the thermal losses. Also, there is some material loss, which we call wear and tear, which will go back to if a machine, some part wears out, have to replace with another part, which has required extraction of a metal from somewhere, and then fabrication of that part, and then transportation of that part. So everything has an associated carbon footprint. In that context, we come to these humble entities called lubricants, which are largely invisible to us unless we are going ourselves for an oil change in some machine of ours. Typically, it will be an automobile. And the more the speed between the two surfaces at the interface where the wear is being experienced in the machine, the more likelihood that you'll have a gaseous lubricant. Whereas the higher the applied force or the load of that system, the more the chance it will be a solid lubricant. So here's what lubricants can do for machines. These are all anecdotes picked up from different examples and case studies. We can see that somewhere between 3 to 7% of annual process energy or annual cost can be, or annual maintenance operation cost can be saved through just the right lubricant for each machine. Now, since energy used is proportional to climate change if the energy is not fossil energy, if the energy is fossil energy, and a significant part of the world's energy is still fossil energy, we can say that lubricants will directly contribute to mitigation of climate change. And this is something that is not often recognized. If I look at a simple oil refinery, and we see that now it's almost 100 million barrels of crude oil are refined daily. And if I say that in all the equipment in the refinery and in the oil infrastructure, whether it's the compressors, the pumps, the towers, the pipelines, everywhere, I focus on getting the best lubricant for each moving part. and I can reduce just 1% of the demand associated with oil processing, I can directly save 80 million tons of CO2 equivalent in GHG emissions right away on an annual basis. A lubricant, of course, is not a very simple molecule. It's some sort of base oil with a bunch of additives that increase the features required in the final product. It's an extremely rapidly growing market. In most cases around the world, lubricants are growing faster than GDP because higher value lubricants are becoming more popular as people understand this implication. And also, machine users and owners are becoming more cognizant of the need to have the right quantity and the right quality of lubricant for each operation. In this chart, without going into too much detail, the green ones are the ones produced from bio-based resources. It's very funny that in the petroleum industry, lubricants made from bio-based resources are called synthetic, and lubricants taken out of the ground in petroleum resources are called natural. So it has taken me a long time, 20 plus years, to actually understand and accept the terminology, except I don't know, but I understand it. So I will say fossil-derived and bio-derived. Typically, you can see that bio-derived esters will do most of the work necessary of fossil-derived lubricants, and therefore substitution is possible. If I then convert that to lube consumption by region, you notice that Asia is driving the growth. It's at 42% of global lube consumption now, up from 34% 10 years ago. That's 2007 relative to 2017. And 2022, 5 more years down the line, I'm sure the numbers are even more dramatic. So if you're going to be using so much lubricant, where is that lubricant going? If you ask people, mostly the answer is no one knows. If no one knows, we have a problem, because the amount of lube being recycled, particularly in the informal economies of Asia, is actually very small. And therefore, something needs to be done. First of all, to make sure that whatever is hitting the environment is harming the environment as little as possible. And whatever does not need to hit the environment is quickly recycled to the best possible level. So these are some examples of what's there in the used lube. And you can see that compared to the virgin lube, the used lubricant has all these added things that it has picked up by contact with a fuel, by contact with metal parts, by contact with rubber gaskets, by contact with just the economic environment. All these things have got picked up by the used lube, and therefore they need to be reprocessed. Now, used oil reclamation is not something we get talked to in great detail, but normally what you really need to do is you want to regenerate the base oil and then top it up with the right additives. You also have to make sure that whatever are those unpleasant things that we saw earlier, those need to be disposed of safely or collected and utilized if we can. In the typical form of lubricant oil, what people do today, even where there's some degree of collection, people just fire it in a furnace and use the energy. But that's not particularly good either, because you know you have polychlorinated biphenyls and other things in the used lube. So when you incinerate them, you're again going to get some pretty unpleasant emissions. So here are some redefining possibilities. Normally, people would just distill it and then do some post-treatment, then hydrofinish it, and then you have new base oil. But what we have taken as an approach is that we actually will take the waste oil and then we will process it through a solvent extraction process. And through the solvent extraction process, we will get the light, medium, and heavy base oils, which can then be reprocessed. This process can produce the hydrocarbon-based group 1, group 2 type lube oils very efficiently. And you can see just the visual look that you get very good quality products. We have actually done actual projects in Saudi Arabia and for the US. And we can handle lube oil distillates with a very wide range of properties. This is quite a unique process. It is available to the market, and it is usually customized to the particular lube mix that one would anticipate. Yields are pretty high. You lose less than 5% of the waste oil, so economically it's quite competitive. It's a continuous process. But it brings us to the next question. When I recycle a lube oil, what can I do to minimize the carbon footprint of converting that lube oil back into something new? And because these are group 1 and group 2 oils, which are mostly hydrocarbon based, what can I do to start increasing their biodegradability and maybe replacing them with something that's more biodegradable? So the first common thinking is you replace it with a bioester. Esters tend to be more expensive. But as a simple example, if I take mineral oil versus current ester, you can see that the initial CSIR load and the well load are significantly improved, almost 16% reduction in friction, and a much higher well load. What we started doing is we started looking at cyclic moieties. There's virtually no lubes known in the world containing cyclic moieties. And by studying these and looking at different ring sizes, and by looking at a natural cyclic moiety, which is available in cottonseed oil and also in another oil in Telangana called sterculia, we realized that if we make synthetic cyclic systems with 3-membered rings, so this is your typical linear lube oil like olive oil, rice bran oil, linseed, etc. And if I epoxidize it selectively, and then from the epoxy, I make a thyrane, put a sulfur compound, we start seeing immediately a very, very sharp improvement in wear. Remember, the linear ester was already better than mineral oil. So now we've gone maybe an order of magnitude or better than mineral oil. And then as an additive to group 1 base stock, we start seeing an anomalous behavior where the 4% thyrane ester is actually better. They're worse than the 3%. So in each case, there is a sweet spot that we can optimize, which also means you don't need too much of our synthetic additive to improve a group 1 base oil or to improve a recycled group 1 base oil. So in summary, what I've been able to show you, I hope, a very narrow focused view that machines are a big cause of climate change. Lubricants are a big contributor to how good or bad a machine is towards climate change. Lubricant recycling, largely ignored, is increasingly an imperative. Lubricant recycling with biolubricant additives can make the overall system more eco-friendly over a period of time. And our novel triangle ester lubricants offer some pretty remarkable value compared to what is the state of the art today. With that, I'd like to remind you that we are doing all this because we want a sustainable environment. I'd like to thank all my colleagues, student and project staff, and the supporting institutions. And I'd like to show you what a sustainable ecosystem looks like. Please come visit us when you have a chance at IIP Dehradun. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. I think good promising technology development in the area of recycling of used lubricants, and surely it makes a lot of sense to use such technologies and obviously needs a concerted effort because it's a very distributed kind of a concept. So collection and then somehow try and bring it back to use again. So and good to share it with the industry, how industry can manage the collection system and then the treatment to recycle it back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
And I now invite Dr. Nand to make his presentation. Dr. Nand holds a PhD in chemical engineering from Ottawa University, Canada. He has been working with other industries before joining Fertiliser Association. He has been working with now Fertiliser Association for the last 35 years and is responsible for all the issues related to fertilizer industry in the country, including technologies, energy conservation, waste utilization, policy matters, and all that. Dr. Nand is connected with several expert groups and committees, somewhere as member, somewhere as chairman, committees of Government of India. He's also a member of the Strategic Advisory Group for Sustainability of International Fertilizer Association at Paris. He is a senior member of American Institute of Chemical Engineers, and he's also chairman of the Northern Regional Center of Indian Institute of Chemical Engineers. So Dr. Nand, please.
You can see my slide and hear as well?
Yes, we can see your slide and hear you as well.
Okay, I'll just straight away give two case studies or two examples of recycling. It was mentioned quite a bit of waste products being generated in any industrial processes. So one is, of course, what we call it phosphogypsum, and phosphogypsum is a co-product or waste of production of phosphoric acid when you react with sulfuric acid with rock phosphate, and the after filtration gypsum is left. There was 1.7 million tons of acid produced, and about 5, depending on the what moisture content, about 5 metric ton of gypsum is generated for every tons of acid, which is reported in terms of P2O5. This gypsum is called phosphogypsum because it has phosphate impurity. 85% of total PG, called phosphogypsum production, is on east coast of India, because 2 of the largest plants are located on east coast, and there are a couple of few more plants are located on east coast. In fact, 67% of total PG production is only at one location at Paradip, because of 2 large size phosphoric acid plants being located there. And there is of course, countrywide, and there is almost 65 million tons of legacy stock of this product, and 93% of this legacy stock is on the east coast of India. Now, this is, of course, the typical analysis of so-called phosphogypsum from 3 plants, and just wanted to show you that it does have phosphate impurity, which is and also it has impurity of fluorine, 0.4 to 0.5% as F, and these are something which is not desirable for its use. Now, this level of impurities, of course, depend on the type of rock phosphate which you are using, and the type of process which you are adopting for generation of phosphoric acid. There are a number of, depending on the water molecules with the gypsum, they are called hemihydrate, dihydrate, or hemihydrate, dihydrate combination. But they are all, result in various level of impurities of phosphate and fluorine. The phosphogypsum is being utilized as a cement additive. You all know that gypsum is utilized as a cement additive. And this cement additive, because of this phosphate impurities, which is not desirable for the cement. So wherever it is being used is normally blended with natural gypsum. Then second, of course, is the soil as a soil amendment, because this alkaline soils, and this is a acidic in nature. So alkaline soil reclamation, it can be used as a one-time application, of course. And then it has sulfur, so it can be used as you can call it as a fertilizer, as a source of sulfur. Then, of course, making various building materials, including plaster materials or other additives or gypsum boards, etc. And then, of course, lately in road constructions. There are some, of course, value-added products as well. As I mentioned, this is sulfur. It can be used as a fertilizer in agriculture. So you can make some, addition to that of micronutrients like zinc, etc. And then you can have a value-added phosphogypsum for agriculture. This is the, present, last year we produced almost 9.5 million tons of phosphogypsum. And the total use was about 63% of that. and that's why you continue to, pile up, accumulate phosphogypsum at certain locations. Main use, of course, you can see is in cement. Now, its utilization is highly dependent on the location, because transportation becomes, first of all, it's handling, it's loading, unloading, packaging, etc., and transportations becomes quite expensive for cement plants. So wherever there are cement plants located in the vicinity of a few hundred kilometers, for example, in Andhra Pradesh, they are able to, of course, these are smaller plants, let's say in Visakhapatnam, etc., that they are able to use 100% of their phosphogypsum. They are able to sell mostly for to cement plants. So this is the status today. This is about the potential that there is a cement industry has a potential of 50 million tons of phosphogypsum for utilization, and this potential will go up further to 23 million tons per year. And this is you have to remember in the context that we are generating 9.5 million tons. Of course, if the production of phosphoric acid goes up, because capacity is not fully utilized, so probably we will be generating higher quantities of phosphogypsum, but there is a potential to use 23 million tons per year. Then for agriculture as a soil conditioner or soil amendment, this is one-time application. So all the survey which has been done, that 44 million tons can be used in total. This is not per year. And as nutrient, this another application possible of 2 million tons of phosphogypsum per year, and then other products, value-added products, are 2 million tons per year. Then, of course, others are, as mentioned, I mentioned earlier, gypsum wallboard, wall panels, plaster, bricks, and in glass fiber, reinforced gypsum, CFRG. Everywhere where, the natural gypsum is, mined gypsum is utilized, it can be replaced with phosphogypsum. Then, what are the challenges in this, that for increasing the phosphogypsum utilization? One is, of course, as I mentioned earlier, that there is a specification. Many a times do not meet requirement. For example, for the cement plants with respect to moisture and content and pH. Then, of course, high cost of transportation. I already mentioned that. And then there is a lack of infrastructure for loading and unloading of phosphogypsum by railways. And then, of course, then even if you transport it by railways, then there is a last mile connectivity from railhead and involves movement by road. It means another loading and unloading operation. And it's transported or handled as a somewhat with high moisture, because if it is completely dry, then it becomes such a fine powder that becomes even more difficult to handle. What are the efforts being made right now? That IFCO, of course, FIFCO is the largest producer of phosphoric acid and phosphogypsum at Paradip. So as I mentioned, they are making all efforts to develop the infrastructure for transporting this phosphogypsum. They are located at Mahanadi River. It is engaged in, I have a pilot plant operation. They have started to transport PG through river, which can be scaled up with the construction of jetty. Then trial run of gypsum from this riverine jetty to Paradip port siding started in February 22. However, due to low draft, because it's a side stream of Mahanadi River, only 2,000 metric ton can be transported at a time. Dredging in the river Mahanadi and near mouth will help in increasing the cargo load in the vessels. IFCO also have planned to operate a dedicated railway siding in the multinodal logistic park being developed by Conclave, located about 10 kilometers from IFCO Paradip plant. So these are all, because they are the largest one, they have the largest legacy stock also. I may just mention that they have exhausted one, storage site, both IFCO and as well as Paradip Phosphates Limited, which is the next one I'm coming to. They have developed the new disposal sites, and for which there are guidelines by Central Pollution Control Board for construction of the base of these things and all the drainage system, etc., and distances from the water bodies, etc. So they have invested, each one of them have invested few hundred crores each to develop new disposal sites. So it's quite expensive to store it. PPL, of course, have developed one, which is not mentioned here, one fertilizer product with the addition of zinc. And the other one, of course, is they have constructed a 1 kilometer road with phosphogypsum is one of the additives in consultation with the Central Road Research Institute. And this has been going under various trials of stress and wear and tear under various testing by in consultation again with the Indian Road Congress. And now they have got approval for initial approval for 3 years for construction using phosphogypsum as one of the additives for construction of roads, because this is one area where probably you can find a larger offtake of phosphogypsum. As a part of circular economy, there was a group in the Niti Aayog, and then the various ministries had various groups. A working group was set up by Ministry of Industry and Commerce for achieving circular economy in gypsum in general, and phosphogypsum also was part of this. And this working group, which we were also part of it, they have made quite a bit of number of recommendations, mainly related to, of course, again, logistics. And they have then already marked them to the respective ministries for a follow-up action. One, of course, is the railway tariff for transportation of phosphogypsum. It has incidentally the higher classification even with the natural gypsum, imported natural gypsum, which is natural gypsum incidentally is also imported. So it has a higher classification, there's a higher tariff than even transportation of natural gypsum. Then, of course, developing all the railway sidings, and fertilizer and cement plants for handling, for loading and unloading, and make available adequate number of railway rakes, which remains, of course, a perennial problem for transportation, even for fertilizers and other products, because there is always a shortage of rakes, whether because being utilized for very, very essential commodities like coal, fertilizers, cement, food grains, etc. And then facilitate, this is for, of course, Ministry of Shipping, facilitate movement by sea and internal waterways by providing infrastructure at ports. There are already, internal waterways are there, which have been, various infrastructure being developed at various sites for loading and unloading of cargo. And then reasonable charge for port handling and wharfage, and allocation of a berth, existing berth everywhere in the ports wherever these are required. So this is for Ministry of Shipping. Then there are certain policy issues. They have made recommendations that purchase preference for cement having minimum content of PG, so that it can promote use of this thing, promote use of CFRRG panels for low cost housing, and promote use of PG as sulfur source. This is for, of course, for Ministry of Agriculture. And then there should be a campaign and promotion program also for utilization of sulfur in agriculture, which is, it fluctuates. What I've shown is about 500,000 tons, but it goes up to 1 million tons in some years. And then, as I said, it's a reclamation of sodic soils. And there should be region-wise guidelines for method and quantum of application of PG by either Ministry of Agriculture or state agriculture departments. Then, of course, promote value-added products like plasters for internal walls. And there is another recommendation which has been done that has been made. You map it for map the phosphogypsum for rare earth elements, and then of course establishing an information portal on generation and utilization of phosphogypsum. So these are the some of the recommendations which are related to various ministries, and this is some of the, of course, one or two more recommendations which are there, that state governments are providing, which slide is missing here, that some subsidy for use of gypsum, natural gypsum. Almost all the state governments are providing some subsidy to the farmers for utilization of natural gypsum. And this subsidy should be by state government, should also be extended to phosphogypsum. That means nothing extraordinary. What is this thing, routine policy recommendations. Then the second element, which I will mention about the water, and this is also one of the things which industry has come a long way in recycle and reuse of water, and show you. And I'm not, instead of going into the entire gamut of all the industries of which are producing both nitrogenous and phosphatic and complex fertilizers, I'll just give one example here. For, and you all aware, for production of urea, there are 2 moles of water are produced, and this is the water generated in the process. And there are other water which is steam condensate, washing, etc., and which is recycled and to large extent treated and recycled into the process. The wastewater contains low concentration of ammonia and urea and cannot be used either as a cooling water or boiler feed water, which are the major water consumption areas in the fertilizer plants. So this water is fed to a hydrolyzer where urea is decomposed into ammonia and carbon dioxide. With initially the hydrolyzers were using the low pressure steam. Now they are using medium pressure steam, which breaks down concentration of ammonia to urea from earlier a few hundred ppm to now few ppm level. And this enables the earlier treatment, which was treated water, which was used mainly for a makeup for cooling tower. Now this is being used as a boiler feed water for high pressure boilers. You can appreciate that high pressure boilers need very, demineralized and pure water. High pressure, when I say about 100 kg, 105 kg steam. And number of plants, especially located in the coastal areas, have suffered the water shortage. So this was the need actually. And some of the plants, for example, I'll tell you at Tuticorin or at Chennai, etc., faced very severe shortage of water in summer, and some had to take even shutdown. So this was started, of course, by Madras Fertilizer, later on now Rashtriya Chemical Fertilizers also. They are now taking the municipal wastewater. And this, after going into the primary, secondary, and tertiary treatment, this being used within the plant. So this is another wastewater utilization of treatment. Now this is again, because all these efforts of water recycling are reflected in the water consumption per ton of urea, which is you can see it has come down from 90s, early 90s to almost half, from 12 meter cube per ton urea to 6 million ton per ton urea. And naturally then wastewater generation, or which is discharge actually, is 2.3 to 0.2. This is not to say for both these parameters, just to mention that there are standards being prescribed by the Central Pollution Control Board, but we are, each unit or each plant is going much beyond that. One is the necessity also, because raw water is very, very expensive. And other is, of course, so it reduces your dependence on raw water, and many places there is quite a bit of shortage of water. Now there are, of course, restrictions on exploitation of groundwater as well. I also may underline that all new plants which have come up now in 2018-19, they have to necessarily, as a precondition from Pollution Control Board, have to have a zero discharge. So they have put up additional facilities to treat like reverse osmosis, etc., and utilize entire water, whatever is either generated from waste by steam condensate or other sweepings, etc., or generated in the process itself, has to be completely recycled and in the process itself. So that's all these two examples I wanted to give you. I'll be happy to answer any question at the end of the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nand. And please stay on if there are any questions at the end of the session. The next speaker we have is Professor Anil Gupta. Professor Anil Gupta is a visiting faculty at Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and also at IIT Bombay. He is founder of the Honeybee Network, National Innovation Foundation, and he's probably a very popular speaker all over in the industry and the academic circles. He has lectured on several platforms. His book on grassroots innovation, I think is all thinking, speaking, and writing is more on innovation. So his book on grassroots innovation has received the Best Business Book Award. He has been associated with several institutions in different capacities, received several awards. He has been adjudged as one of the 50 most influential people in the field of intellectual property rights around the world. And he has received several national and international honors. He has received Padma Shri in 2004, which is National Civilian Award, Civil Award by the President of India, and is member of the many government and corporate bodies. He is a widely published author. So, Professor Anil Gupta, just within the time frame that we have, 20 minutes, so that we can.
I'll take less.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, please.
Friends, this is a very apt subject which has been chosen for this Lovraj Kumar Memorial workshop and lecture. I had the opportunity to give another Lovraj Memorial lecture many years ago by the National Wasteland Society on roots of creativity in Indian society. That was the lecture that I had given at the time. And I feel it is a privilege to remember him and to honor him in this manner, because he was a great thinker, doer, and philosopher in some sense of very progressive thoughts. What I'm going to begin with first is that the circular economy has been part of our culture. It's very deep culture which is not anymore as evident in our behavior as it was when I was a child and we bought something from a shop. I'm talking about late 50s. What would happen is the shopkeeper would take a piece of paper. At that time, the bags were not popular. Nobody used even the paper bags were infrequently used. So they will take a newspaper piece, put the things on the top. There was a rope, thread hanging on the roof.
he will tie it with that thread, and that became the packet, very apt packet. Whatever size of things you have, you can use a bigger piece or a smaller piece, double piece or single piece, depending upon the weight of the things. And this you brought home. And then my grandfather would say, okay, now you take out your things. He will spread the piece of paper below the bed, below the mattress on the bed, and he will hang that 1 meter piece of thread on a nail, so that next time we have to give something to someone, we will use that piece of paper and we will use that piece of thread. Even that piece of thread, 1 meter thread, was not wasted. This was the culture in our country, and a very deeply embedded culture, not just in my home. Large number of homes practiced it. Then what happened to us? And why did we become such a wasteful, waste-oriented society? Surely different forces have worked on that, and it is not too late ever to correct that situation. I will now move to some examples from grassroots innovations where the circular economy is at the very heart of creativity and problem solving. I'll take both the problem that they have solved, and I'll also take some problems that they have not solved. First of all, let us talk about farm machinery. Almost all farm machinery, whether it was the case of a motorcycle-based plowing machine, what is called as Sati, 10,000 of these pieces, these machines were being used in Saurashtra about 20 years ago. Now there are more than 15,000-20,000, and there are about 500 fabricators who are making it. Mansukh Bhai Jagani, who did it in 1992, discovered something interesting which every fabricator has used. And he discovered that the automobile components, automobile life may be 15 years or 20 years, but the life of each component is very different. So life of axle, for example, may be 40 years. Life of steering wheel may be for 100 years. Life of differential is again maybe 30, 40 years. They realized that there's a lot of energy which has not been exhausted and which is lying in the junkyard. And they started using these components for developing their solutions. Now, obviously, then differential were of different automobiles. So they figured out which differential of which car would be useful for a device that they had to develop. So when they were developing motorcycle-based plowing machine, the RPM of engine is, let's say, about 3,200. They wanted to increase the torque and reduce the speed, so they needed a gear, and they reduced the RPM to about 1,200, and thereby increase the torque. Now, the differential that they are using, the axle that they are using, these were used in salvaged, I will call them salvage components, salvage economy. So they got it, they salvaged it from the second-hand component from the waste automobiles and other the vehicle which had met with accident or otherwise, and used them very profitably. So ability to use components in which energy has not yet fully been exhausted, and the fatigue of that component has not led to its disintegration and its functional properties are still intact. This discovery by the innovators in different parts of the country led to a very buoyant system, very dynamic system, very effective system of affordable farm machinery meant and adaptive to local conditions. So for example, if the axle length was not enough and they had to, the distance between cotton rows was different in different kind of soil. In the soil which is light, you have larger distance between the two rows. Soil which is heavier, you have lesser distance. Now, if you had the distance different, then you could extend the length of the axle by welding another piece to that on both sides. And this knowledge helped to develop whole train of solutions. Now they have become mini tractors and so on. So my first contention is that if this is true, what I'm describing, which of course it is, and if we can learn something from it, would it not be worthwhile if we put fatigue factor on each component of the machinery, which will tell us what the prospective life of that component is, so that a very vibrant salvage industry can emerge, which can use these components for affordable manner, and our standard should emerge And our certifying agencies should approve use of second-hand components for developing affordable solutions. Why should there be a taboo that a regulatory agency, ARI or others, will not approve a vehicle which has second-hand components, even if these components have, on rigorous scientific standards, life or energy enough left in them to be used for another 10 years or 20 years? This is a question, this is a policy question that I would like to flag here from first example that I have taken as to how do we really modify the policy framework of the country, standards, the regulatory principles, so that we do not go the Western way. Invest, what they do when the vehicles have lived their life, they make them flat, they compress them with a high pressure system and they make them into sheets, and then the junkyard, you will find automobiles compressed into sheets. So they don't believe in salvage economy. They don't believe in taking out the component which are still functional. But we should believe in that. We can't go the European way. Recently, the government had a policy where all the vehicles beyond 15 years had to be junked. But they did not develop a salvage, a circular economy model for taking the component out of this machine. This is where I think a group like yours, which is much more knowledgeable and very influential in the policy, we should try to put our energy together and develop that policy so that when you junk those automobiles, you don't junk the energy which is left in a steering wheel or a differential or an axle or other parts of the body that are still functionally viable and vibrant and effective. First one. The second thing that I would like to mention is that some of the innovators, for example, one innovator in Champaran found that he developed a pollution control device for his diesel engine. And he used some concentrator rings and a system by which he could then concentrate to take the pollutant carbon particles completely away out of the exhaust. And this particle we gave to some paint industry, the tire industry, whether they could use it as a carbon black for their industrial application. So the pollution control devices of this kind, which take away the carbon, could use obviously for different purposes. This innovator will not be able to find the industrial application for that. Some intermediary will have to emerge to take it out from there. Third example, which I want to take, is of Nagaland. Imli Toshi had a bamboo lathe machine. So he would polish the nodes of the bamboo and there will be powder which is coming out of the bamboo. This powder he mixed with a polymer and made hydrogel, because when you make a turbine for rotating with a small stream, if it is metallic turbine, it will need more pressure, more thrust on the turbine. So if you make the turbine of a composite waste of bamboo waste material, it will move with lesser pressure of the water also. What a good use of a composite material for generating energy from low velocity streams in the mountains. Another example. Now I'm saying that these examples need not be copied as such, but they can be, the principles underlying, the heuristics underlying them are very effective. Why haven't the use of composites made out of bio-waste in turbine industry picked up? I don't have an answer for this question, but I believe that large number of hydro turbines could become more viable and more effective even in the areas where streams have either fluctuating flow or low velocity flow and can generate energy in areas where taking energy from power lines is much more costlier. So decentralized power generation through hydrogels, heavy turbines made of composite material could be extremely effective. Let me go to the next example. And here is an example. In 1988, we were having a workshop in Chitradurga with some blacksmiths and carpenters about how to solve problems. And one of them said that, I faced a problem. When they use wooden plows, generally they use acacia wood, which does not wear out too much, but sometimes it does wear out. So he wanted to make a metallic shoe for a wooden plow so that the shear will be metallic and the base and the arm will be wooden. So weight on the animal the animal that has to pull will be much lesser instead of entire plow being of iron. Look at the beauty of this solution. Now we asked him, so which iron did you use? Which material did you use? He went to the junkyard and looked at his material science insight and intuition. He found that the suspension of the automobile, the material of which suspension is made, was the right material to be molded into shoe for the wooden plow. Something can be learned from it. He worked out that this had the right temper and the right weight and the right ability to hold its shearing ability. Its wear and tear ability of that material is much less. And obviously, if 2-ton truck is suspended on this suspension, obviously it must have a huge power resilience to be able to tolerate that kind of weight and not tear it off or not disintegrate, so to say. So intuitively, he discovered this. And my point is that these kind of intuitive discoveries by these grassroots innovators can be powerful leads for us not to follow. No, I'm not saying we are going to make more shoes of the wooden plow. Maybe wooden plows are less used now because iron plows are a little more popular. That's a different matter. But the fact remains that the bullock will have much less weight to pull if it was a wooden plow with iron shoe. That's no doubt. The life of the bullock will get extended wherever we are using bullocks as a means of traction. One more example, and this is an example about Odisha, because Professor Basu would know that in Ganjam district there is a Kevla industry. You know, this perfume, this incense that they make, and a lot of waste of the Kevla is lying around. So we have a program called as Biotechnological Innovation Ignition School, sponsored by BIREC and DBT. So there students are supposed to identify the underutilized or unutilized bio-waste from which they must do some experiment and find a utility. So one of the students from Odisha found that this waste was lying around, and he did some experiments to find out their growth promoting properties. He somehow noticed some weeds growing around this waste, which were growing very tall and rapidly. And he developed a growth promoter from a waste. And he then showed us in about 3 weeks of time that the course was there, that look at these vegetables, how well they are doing. And a new output, a new business could develop based on the Kevla waste. So what I'm saying is that if students could be encouraged through these programs or other programs, every student at least should make one project where he either uses a bio waste or some other waste and develop some solutions which would be able to find a utility for this. It could become a kind of a course across all disciplines. So if you are in electronics, you take electronic waste. If you are in material science, you take material waste. If you are in biological science, you take biological waste. But in whichever discipline the student is, one project in the 4 years of BTech or 2 years of masters or 4 years of PhD, one project every student must do to experimentally find a useful transformation of a waste material which needs to be used to a better use. That would be very useful. That brings me to the next problem that we have, which is, do we have a waste exchange in our country? Now, I was hearing about the waste of fertilizer plants and others, and I'm sure other colleagues have already shared different kinds of waste. In Tirupur, one experiment was done. Once the whole editorial board of industrial ecology, I invited them to our institute way back in the 90s. Suryan Arkaman was the chief editor of this journal of industrial ecology. And industrial ecologists define waste as a material for which use has not yet been found. Waste is a material for which use has not yet been found. So there is no waste in Chile speaking. And near Denmark, Copenhagen, there is a place where they have created a zero waste, a cluster of the industries. So they did a study on Tirupur cluster for textile and other things that they have. There were 50 trucks of water which were brought into the cluster every day. And by mapping the wastewater and other things that were going out, they could bring it down to 4. I would wish such case studies are taught to our students to understand that the real-time changes can be brought about. Water is a scarce, and Tamil Nadu, has even more scarcity of water than any other state, because from Andhra Pradesh, train will bring water to Tamil Nadu many times. In such cases, such case studies should become a necessary part of our curriculum, so that the students can discover economic benefit, not just the ecological benefit, not just the environmental benefit, not just the social benefit, but economic benefit out of circular economic thinking. And this has not yet come up. So I'm very keen that one of the outcome of this workshop would be that we do experiment with waste exchange at different levels. I was talking to the Gujarat government recently, GIDC MD, that why shouldn't we try to make a waste exchange so that everybody puts on the line what waste they have. One person's waste can become raw material for another. Of course, it's very common sense. And yet we have not yet done too much. But there are some good projects students are doing. I want to refer to one particular project. You know, we have ceramic cluster in Srinagar and many other, Morbi and other places. And a lot of ceramic waste lies around. And ceramic, as you know, is a signature of, in archaeological finding, we use ceramic as a signature of a time. You know, thousands of years, this material remains there. It doesn't get disintegrated for thousands of years. So that is why it is used for timing the period in which this particular culture, this particular ceramic was developed. Now, this waste is lying there. So this student, I think Dr. Yadav's a student, probably from ICT Bombay, who used this waste mixed with a polymer and found a way of creating a very useful material for developing some insulators or whatever else that he had done. We gave him Gyati Award for that, Gandhian Young Technological Innovation Award. Now government has stopped all the award, which is very tragic and unfortunate. I want to put in a line for that because, you know, for film fair, we will give 150 awards, you know, for film industry, we will give 150 awards. Just soon after this award, this decision was announced, the film industry award were given by Government of India, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, 150 or 200 awards. Each category, there were 5-6 awards. But for scientists, award will distort their mind and corrupt their mind. Possibly that's the way government thinking is. And I really wish that we should do something about this. This is not a nice thinking, but that apart, these awards which we give to the students come out with sometime the very good circular economy applications. And I would wish that we develop some way of recognizing such scholars, especially under and at this platform, who develop good circular economy solutions, so that every year when you have this workshop, one of the things should be done is to recognize such students and invite them maybe for a session or a panel, even if they get 5 minutes each. We can at least recognize 20 such students or 15 such students around the country in different fields, chemistry, material science, whatever, who have done some interesting work, so that there is an incentive for such students to take up such problems. At least they will get recognition, and you are the top leaders of the discipline and of each discipline. So therefore, once they get noted by you, their career will progress, hopefully faster and better. And that's what we want. If we want circular economy to become the hardcore mainstream thinking of our society, then obviously we should encourage young people who are doing this kind of work, which is the need of the hour. Let me come to the last part. And here I would like to talk about the problem which remain to be solved, so that when we create a waste exchange, we also create materials for which we do not know what use will be there. So to give you some examples, particularly from biological sector, biological or agriculture sector, in Kashmir, Jammu Kashmir, Union Territory of Jammu Kashmir, many times the hailstorm takes place unseasonally, and a lot of unripe apple fall on the ground. And this apple cannot be put to any other use, at least as on date. But surely this can be very profitably used for extracting pectin and maybe other enzymes from here. So all such bio-waste, which is because of climatic fluctuation, there are more instances now. For example, you know that recently in rains, which came in this month, a lot of chili in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, which was harvested and lying in the yards, got damaged. Now, what do we do with that chili? Can we extract something from that, even though it is damaged for direct consumption? This is an emergency situation. There are a lot of farmers have lost a lot of their production, but this biomass is not yet completely wasted. If we can develop some emergencies, quick solutions, effective solutions, so that we can extract value out of this waste material for one use, but for other use, it can still be very useful material. So I think there must be a specific wing of circular economy scholars, practitioners, who will look at the consequence of climatic fluctuations and change on emerging situation of a lot of crops getting damaged at the time of harvest. And these materials, can they be used for extracting enough useful phytochemicals, enzymes, proteins, or whatever else that can be extracted in a low-cost, effective manner by methods either which are DIY methods or easy to fabricate methods, so that farmers can get more valuable output out of them. Even if they have lost the commodity value, they can get the useful chemical, phytochemical value out of this waste. So this is one area where I think something very useful needs to be done. My last example comes from IMMT. And I want to mention this because I was teaching a course to the PhD scholars on grassroots innovation and meeting the unmet need. And about 400 students of PhD from all CSIR labs in each batch. So the last batch, we just finished the class a few days back, 2 students from IMT. One of them is studying the cobs after hulling. That means you take the grains out of the corn cob, and this material has apparently very useful property. So then I told him that, look, can we send you the cobs from Northeast and Jammu Kashmir, where GIAN is having a project just now, Honeybee Network and GIAN and having a project there with the help of FIPI. And he kept readily agreed and did it. There's another student who's working on silk of the corn. You know, corn has a silky fibers, and when they mature, they become dark. But this has no use today. It is just thrown away. But this student is going to use now, also analyze the silk from Northeast and Jammu Kashmir corn, see whether they have some unique property which the corn from Orissa or corn from plains may not have. So what I'm saying is that I find this very enchanting, that if students who are doing this small societal project can maybe spend 2 weeks of experimental work to look at the materials which are underutilized, not just unutilized, not just bio-waste, but underutilized materials, which today are either being composted or put to sometimes just thrown away, we can develop huge value, and not only value for the society, but also value in terms of the scholars in whom we are building this spirit and strengthening their thinking, that they can contribute to the circular economy goals of our society. So I would hope that some of the ideas about waste exchange, about introducing the course on circular economy, using real examples of like where things have changed, case studies like Tirupur, and doing some experiment, at least one experiment, to analyze either underutilized, unutilized, or bio-waste or other waste, which can be put to new uses. The use of slag in making road, the steel industry slag for road making is one of the latest outcome of how the circular economy is getting a huge push, by where this waste was lying in tons, billions of tons without any use, and now it is finding use. So I think the community of scholars like you have contributed a great deal, but we need to involve our younger scholars more intensively in this movement to generate more value out of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. And I think true to what we were hearing about you about the grassroots innovation, the idea that you're thrown is like on this small activities coming right from the grassroots can be really changing, path-breaking innovations, I can say. The thinking can be going from the bottom up rather than everything coming from the top to bottom from the grassroots. I'm sure reconditioning of the components, machines, mechanical things, things are happening in the country. You must be knowing about the reconditioned bearings being reconditioned in the country and they put to use again. Some of these things probably were the need of the day, but then maybe with the prosperity coming, people have deviated from that. Otherwise, the tires were being reused in the country for padding in the tires, making the shoe soles for the village people. But somehow with the prosperity coming, things have changed. But obviously, what you are saying is very interesting for us to look at that. And you talked about the students getting some projects and how to encourage that. Certainly needs that consideration also. And we at our Lovraj Kumar Memorial Trust have started some awards for the students from last 2 years. We have been giving some at the IIT Delhi. Some students have been receiving some awards for some innovative work. So great. Thank you so much for your presentation. We will now invite Professor Yadav In fact, the last two speakers are speaking from USA, so we have to adjust the timing so that they don't have to wake up in the middle of the night for giving this presentation. I think Professor Yadav, I think, is known to the chemical industry, all kinds of industries in the country. He was formerly Vice Chancellor at Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai, and known for his great research work contribution in the industry. He has been elected in the US National Academy of Engineering. He has received Padma Shri Award from President of India. He is adjunct professor even after his retirement from the university. At so many universities he's connected with. He has got 116 patents granted to his credit. He has been guiding PhD students. The number has exceeded 107 PhD students he has been guiding. Wonderful. And he's still now providing consultancy to various industries. So great, Professor Yadav, we are all keen to listen to you.
Yeah, let me see whether I could use my presentation. I don't know how to do it actually. Because I'm using my iPad and I had given my slides to Mr. Vishwakarma. So can you do it from there? Because it's rather difficult for me.
Yes,
Can you
sir,
see
we are
this?
doing from here. Yes, sir, we are doing from here.
So you can see my slides now?
Yeah, we can see your slides.
We can
Thank
see
you.
your slides.
So you see the title of my topic is the net zero goal sustainability, adoption of green hydrogen technologies, carbon dioxide refineries and biomass valorization. And what Professor Anil Gupta was saying, it is true, because if we don't do recycling of anything, whether it is material or energy, we'll have a grim future. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So, you know, what it shows that in the year 2020, January, the atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration was 410 ppm. And you know, in 2020, practically no, economic activity was done across the world. Still, we added 2 ppm. Within a year, that is what the scene. And today, actually, the atmospheric concentration is 421 ppm. And what it shows that if we don't have any technological intervention for carbon dioxide, we'll have a very grim future. In fact, it is predicted by 2050, we will have temperatures rising in the excess of 7 degrees. And imagine what is going to happen to the mankind. So perhaps it will be the end of the world. So this is the reason we must act upon the so-called circular economy, carbon dioxide refineries and whatnot. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So what is the prophecy? The prophecy is that India will be a leading exporter of green energy by 2030 and import bill will be reduced. So it means we must have a proper policy for doing that. And we must have technologies to do that. And there might be a lot of collaboration between academic world, the good researchers and industry. Next. And green hydrogen will be less than $1. I've been saying this since 2015 because I've been involved in the development of this green hydrogen technology, but people did not pay attention to that. And now everybody says, can you do it tomorrow? That is the problem with our country, that we, awake when there is a need, dire need. So let us discuss this also. Next. And it is claimed that it will be India's century. Now, whether it is political or apolitical, I don't know, but I certainly believe it will be our century. Next. And India will be the third largest economy, $30 trillion in next 30 years. That is what Honorable Piyush Goyal said about 3 weeks ago. Next. And, next, please. Next. It's taking time, I guess. Yeah, what the next point there was that, if we achieve net zero by 2050, will it mean that just 1 minute, please. Will it mean that all goals of the sustainable development goals will be achieved by then. That is one of the important things. Another issue which is related to industry is the PLI scheme for 15 key sectors of the economic growth. And this is well known to all the captains of industry. But what is missing there is given in the next slide. Please go next. Can you do the next slide? Yeah. The PLI scheme should be extended to hydrogen production, carbon dioxide refineries, waste biomass refineries, and plastic recycling. And one of the things which I believe is the CSR contribution should be extended to 3%. And this I had said in my lecture to HRD in 2016 and 17 also. The additional 1% research should go to research institutes of proven track record and not just the centrally funded institutions, because government labs also should be included to develop this technology. And they increase the tax benefit to genuine industry spending funds on our research, development, and innovation. And see what China is doing. We must learn lessons from China. We always compare ourselves with China, but we don't follow some of the things. Next. Yeah, perhaps you know that the ministry announced, the power ministry announced on February 17, the so-called green hydrogen and green ammonia policy. And what they also said that 50% of country energy requirements will be met by the so-called renewable energy sources. And so in case of ammonia and hydrogen, water and air will be our feedstocks. So this is very, very important that water splitting technologies will be into the fore. Next. Yeah. So this is where, Professor Gupta mentioned that this is what I say. Many times, chemical engineering students are depressed because they think there is no scope. Perhaps chemical engineering will have the largest scope in this sustainability. And that is called recycle engineering, whether it is physical, chemical, or biological, because chemical engineering is a rate process-based engineering. So material sustainability, recyclability, zero waste society, creating that is going to be a horrendous task. And this is where there will be a lot of scope for Indian chemical industry, particularly the green hydrogen and green ammonia. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Then we are talking about renewable resources. What happens to the used solar panels, the wind turbines, the plastics, the batteries, the construction and debris waste? So anything which is in the form of solid, liquid, and gas should be treated, as a wealth. And we have to have the conversion processes. Otherwise, we'll require 3 words. Next. Yeah. So, we talk about Trinity. Our culture, we talk about Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, and the Christians will talk about Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. As a scientist, I believe the new Trinity for us will be the solar energy, wind energy, and hydrogen. And hydrogen takes prime spot here because solar and wind will not give me materials and chemicals, but hydrogen will give, because hydrogen will be the most important ingredient of all chemical processes. Next. So, why we are having this problem of greenhouse gases and all that? That is because our economy is based on carbon. And we are talking about renewable biomass-based industry. So whether you have carbon coming from, renewable or fossil fuels, ultimately in the form of fuels, it will be the carbon dioxide which is being emitted, and that is responsible for the global warming. We debated this in one of our papers. In fact, there are more than 9,000 downloads for this paper, because we also talked about the policy of the government. So a lot of people from USA, Canada, they talked to me about this, because this was radically a different thought. So you can read it because I have deliberately made it open access. Next. So this I already talked. Next. Yeah. So you see what is happening. If you want to, restrict our temperatures to less than 2 degrees C, or particularly 1.5 degrees C, we must not emit more than 10 gigatons of carbon dioxide. In the year 2020, it was something like 30 gigatons. Last year, it was 35 gigatons, and it is believed now it is already 40 gigatons. And we should not be emitting more than 10 gigatons, then only we can restrict the global temperature rise to less than 1.5 degrees C. Next. Next, yeah. So I mentioned that no matter what you do, whether you have a petroleum-based industry or a bio-based industry, the so-called carbon neutral industry, to achieve that goal, we must have carbon negative industry. That is the only way we can achieve this goal. Next slide. So, yeah. So this is the case for hydrogen economy. I wrote, editorials, articles, newspaper articles, including vernacular newspaper. And I am very happy to mention that my research has been supported by ONGC Energy Center for last 16 years now. And we developed this ICT OEC technology. And I'm very confident that I can produce hydrogen in less than $1. So I'm in the business. So a lot of people are getting attention, and in fact, I've got offers from abroad also to transfer this technology to them. This is because I'm in USA right now. I'm talking to some prospective, people. Next. So you see, no matter what you do, which method you choose, if your objective is to decarbonize the economy, then what we are doing currently for hydrogen production, whether it is brown hydrogen based on coal, it produces 19 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of hydrogen. Gray from natural gas, which the refineries are right now using in their 8 different processes, that produces something like 11 tons. The blue hydrogen, so-called natural gas hydrogen with carbon capture and storage, it will be about 0.2 tons per and green hydrogen, which is electrolysis of water or thermochemical processes, what we have been doing, it will be totally zero greenhouse gas emission. But look at the cost of this hydrogen. Anywhere it will range from $1.2 to $2.1. In fact, people are believing in the case of green hydrogen, if it is around $3 per kg, you are in the business. Next. So you see that in next place. In our case, when we develop this process, we can produce hydrogen in less than $1. So what is this work is supported by OEC. I mentioned to that we are taking solar power. We have a molten salt storage. We develop some new combinations, and we have this copper chlorine cycle with water as the input, and you get 1 kg of hydrogen, for which 8 kg of oxygen comes out. So we can do oxidation of biomass, hydrogenation of biomass, waste biomass, plastics. You can convert carbon dioxide to methane and higher hydrocarbons. And you see the gamut of chemicals which you can produce, which is given on the right-hand side, like methanol, dimethyl ether, formic acid, formates, alcohols, green ammonia. You can use hydrogen in fuel cells, 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, or you can directly use in IC engines, generate electricity, or use it in the steel industry, because that is a highly polluting industry. So green steel. Next. Next, please. Yeah. So, in the our story of success is that we can produce hydrogen in less than $1, which are patented. We got several patents in that. Then we have produced, also we have technology for blue hydrogen from biomass and bioalcohols. Then we can convert carbon dioxide to methane and higher hydrocarbons, carbon dioxide into dimethyl ether. Very interestingly, dimethyl ether is a very good substitute for LPG. The same infrastructure can be used. It can also be used as a substitute for diesel. So, but the policy is required for this dimethyl ether usage. So, and then the carbon dioxide into methanol, and we have Niti Aayog talking about methanol economy. And then waste plastics into chemical feedstock. One of the ideas which government of India talks about is banning plastic. Ban has never worked anywhere. You have to encourage people to recycle it. So I will give you some ideas. And we have also worked on waste, biomass-based 14 platform chemicals, some of which we have patented. Next. Yeah. So, this CO2 into methane and higher hydrocarbons, we have, developed a catalyst which doesn't decay at all. We have tried it for 1,000 hours, 2,000 hours, very interestingly. And this is also supported by ONGC. And any carbon dioxide can be used, okay, including the coal-fired power plant. So we have done a lot of experiments in this. And it can be commercialized for making hydrogenated methane, because right now IOC is talking about it in Delhi using hydrogen mixed with, natural gas, maybe 10%, 15%. They say you can go up to 20%, we can produce it. And so there is no need to add hydrogen to natural gas. Next. And so I mentioned about carbon dioxide to dimethyl ether. And what is interesting is that this work was done by my postdoc. And so this Kothari postdoctoral fellowship and Godavari biorefineries, because they are producing something like 2,300 tons of carbon dioxide from the fermenters. We can use them and convert that. So they are joined hands with me, and we'd like to sell this technology to others. So right now, a lot of pilot experiments are going on. It's a very interesting concept. Next. Then carbon dioxide into methanol also, we have got patents. And so we can produce this green methanol, so-called green urea, and a green fertilizer industry, because fertilizer industry, will be benefited because we have a lot of subsidy in that industry. So I think we can take it off, provided we convert all this waste into this. And these 14 biomass platform chemicals, which I mentioned about, we valorize this biomass. HMF is one of the most important chemicals in that, then furfural, dimethylfuran, linolenic acid, even glycerol, which is a co-product of biodiesel. And unless glycerol is valorized, you don't get, biodiesel at a cheap cost. Next. Okay, so yeah, next. So, in 2050, what we are going to have is 33% of our energy will come from renewables. Mostly it will be solar, wind, of course, hydro, nuclear, gas, and coal is used. Next. Yeah. So you can see that, yeah. So one of the things what I'm talking about is that, biomass should not be used to make biofuels. Most of the people across the world are talking about biofuels. Why? If you want to have a carbon negative, economy, and we did this calculation, it is given in my paper. If you have 1 kg of crude oil, you get 32 megajoules of fuels plus 0.2 kg of chemicals. On the contrary, if you have 1 kg of biomass, which is shown here typically by corn, you get only 6 megajoule of fuel, or you get 0.8 kg, 8 kg of, chemicals. Next. So what we did, based on the current capacity of the refinery processing, which is, to have something like that means, it was, when we wrote this paper, it was about 97.4 million barrels per day. That comes to something like 250 barrels per second. But if you convert 100% biomass into fuels, you get only 10 barrels per second. And if you convert 100% of biomass into chemicals, you get 320 barrels per second. So what it means, it is better to have non-fossil based, energy source and use carbon for making chemicals and fuels. Next. So carbon should not be burned. Even if you have ethanol, for example, convert that into all these things. Okay, this is what is given here. So although bioethanol and other biomass derived chemicals can be used to make blue hydrogen, it should not be burned as a fuel if you want to achieve the net zero goal by 2050. And carbon should be used as a source of chemicals of materials, whether it is waste carbon, whatever source. And bioethanol is more valuable as a feedstock for biorefinery than a fuel, as our analysis shows. Okay, it makes actually more economic sense in addition to the net zero budget. So you have renewable energy sources, solar, wind, geothermal, nuclear, hydro, and hydrogen. I was inducted into US Academy last week, and I met one of the very important functionaries of the government, and he said they are also going again encouraging the nuclear energy because that is a net zero, net carbon zero energy source. And you see what has happened in Europe, Germany and Netherlands, they are again firing their power plants with coal. So it is economic sense. So this is where we have to go for this hydrogen-based economy and not use carbon as a source of energy. Next. Yeah. So we can make a large number of chemicals, and all these are hydrogenation and oxidation processes. Whether it is C5, C6 sugars, cellulose, or lignins. Remember, this entire thing is based on hydrogenation and oxidation. That means green hydrogen is going to be our savior. Next. Can you go to the next? I know it is a little slow. And the so-called methanol economy. See, if you have, syngas, whatever is the source, you can make all sorts of chemicals. So carbon dioxide going to methanol, again, it becomes a part of methanol economy. We have written a very big paper on this. Next. And look at the waste plastic, because, the single-use plastic is talked a lot. And in our country, sometimes people are enthusiastic about banning things, but that is not the solution. Solution is to encourage people to recycle things. So if you have chemolysis, pyrolysis, gasification, all waste plastic can be converted. 2 of my PhD students are working on that. Incidentally, one of them is presenting today in this university. So we can see that whether you depolymerize it or you convert it into an energy source, recycling is very easy. Next. Yeah, so once you have hydrogen, you have hydrogen vehicles, 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, you have hydrogen-based fuel cells, you make synthetic fuels from carbon dioxide, or you can upgrade biomass, which is, you suppose you pyrolyze biomass and you get the bioil has to be upgraded with hydrogen. Or you have green ammonia. In fact, the metal industry is highly polluting. Steel industry produces, 2.3 tons of carbon dioxide per ton of steel. So steel industry, we can have green steel. And there are many other uses in chemical and allied industry and heating, for example, in the Western world. So hydrogen, it will drive the entire economy of the world in future. Next. So we have this different water splitting processes, and ours is based on copper chlorine cycle. I will not discuss others. Next. Next, please. Yeah. So this, you can go to the next slide also. Yeah, so this ICT OEC technology, which we call, and we can produce it at 95 cents. And we are not adding the value which you get out of the oxygen, because oxygen is about 11 to 12 cents per kg, industrial oxygen. So this, we modified this cycle. It is not that we developed it. It was known, but we modified, and therefore we got international patents. Next. And it promises to achieve higher efficiencies, lower environmental impact, and low cost of hydrogen. So we have obtained several patents. You go on this, yeah. And right now, ONGC has given us a place in Goa. So we are going to build a big pilot plant. Another we build in Andhra, and the refineries will benefit a lot because there are 8 processes in refineries where hydrogen is required. Okay, and they are using it from the so-called gray hydrogen, steam reforming of natural gas. And Canadian company has also shown interest in marketing our technology. In fact, they are meeting me next week. And we can do it in 3 years. The Ministry of Petroleum is also interested. The reason is that because mine is not based on electrolyzers. And the electrolyzer technology is quite expensive. Next. Next, please. Yeah. So you can see that we can produce this hydrogen. This is some calculations are given here. So we compared with 19 reported technologies. This published literature, I analyzed it. And you can see that some of these places, they talk into steam methane refining, for example, with carbon capture. They talk about $2.27 per kg. You go across, next page, you go to the next slide, please. there are 19 reported, and you see solar PV electrolysis, is something like, $5 to $10. Yeah, 5.278, you see that $23. So that means they're very expensive. And unless you have economic scale, you cannot bring it down. So next, and you see the last one is mine. So which is a solar fast thermochemical, and we can produce it at less than 25 cents. Next. Next, please. Yeah. So you know what it says, the US Department of Energy says, if you bring down your cost to less than say $2.9 per kg, you are in the business. And one of the problems with this electrolyzer cost, it was something like $1,100 per kilowatt, and it will go down to $220, 2040. So this is very, very important because the cost of electrodes, the efficiencies, and all those things are very expensive as far as electrolyzer, and everybody is announcing big investments in that. That means they have captured the attention of the world. Some companies said, oh, we can also make it at less than $1. Very fine, but do you have the technology? That is the next question. Next. So by 2030, it will be green hydrogen and green ammonia because of the storage potential, denser material. But yes, so this will be the policy of the entire world. That is 100% because hydrogen is a very good carrier of energy and can be used in many, many areas, which I mentioned. Next. Yeah. So I mentioned about steel industry. It is one of the most 2.0 ton CO2 per ton of steel. So use of green hydrogen to produce green steel, and India aims to have 300 million tons by 2030. So you can imagine, and we are signatory to this Paris Agreement of 2050. Next. Next, please. Yeah. And so this, few thoughts about plastic recycling. Waste plastic is a chemical feedstock. So whether you recycle it, upcycle, downcycle. So I'm against ban on plastic. I'm telling you that. I'm in favor of increasing recycling. And how do we increase? There has to be some incentive for that. Next slide, please. So, and hydrogen is the key in these processes. So, if for plastic waste, if you do hydrogenation, some of my students are working in that area, PVC, PET, polyamides, rubber, all these technologies are already known to the petrochemical and refinery industry. So there is nothing new in that. So only thing is we have to develop this hydrogenation technology. So that is very, very important. And hydrogen is safe because the public perception is that hydrogen means hydrogen bomb. Hydrogen is not deuterium. So this is also one of the things. Hydrogen is 14 times lighter than air. There are better sensors available now. So hydrogen leakage also need not be worried. And believe me, hydrogen is safer than all this petrol and diesel. Next. Yeah. So this is what I already mentioned to that. And so when hydrogen is commercially available, we have been using hydrogen in industry. Okay, so it is not that we don't know that. So hydrogen fuel cells are going to be the key to zero emissions, whether heavy duty transportation systems, including buses, rails, truck transport, and you can look at examples of California or for that matter, Korea. So it is a very interesting thing. Next. So my next slide says that hydrogen is safer than conventional fuels. Although nothing is 100% safe, hydrogen has been shown to be safer than conventional fuels in multitude of aspects and studies. Okay, only thing we have to go to the commercial scale. Next. And luckily our honorable road transport minister is using a hydrogen car. So I must quote before I end that, each work has to pass through 3 stages: ridicule, opposition, and then acceptance, as Swami Vivekananda said. So 100% it will happen. Next, and hydrogen economy will be accepted. Next slide, please. And so in 2050, what is going to happen is that, next is, yeah. So if the society accepts hydrogen as a part of the economy, then obviously hydrogen will be very, very big factor in saving the world from disaster. And the hydrogen economy can be elegantly intertwined to make many chemicals from waste carbon sources, including biomass and C1 off gases. There is a need to develop different hydrogen production technologies and to evaluate their impact on energy and environment to meet the net zero goal. And biomass should not be used for production. It should be used rather for production of valuable chemicals and not as a source of fuel. And government of India should adopt hydrogen economy to meet the demands of the Paris Agreement. And I can say on my behalf and also OEC's behalf, ICT OEC hydrogen technology is one of the most viable technology and should be part of the hydrogen mission. Last. So I conclude with this. Thank you very much for allowing me to make my presentation online. And if you have any questions, I'll be here for some more time because I've got another meeting. If anybody has any questions, those could be asked. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Yadav. Very informative, as expected from you. Very informative presentation, and see your level of confidence on the hydrogen economy. And okay, so thank you very much. And now we move to the next and the last speaker, Dr. Jennifer. Dr. Jennifer did her PhD from the Illinois University and MBA from the University of Chicago. And she's currently the CEO of LanzaTech. LanzaTech is developing a variety of platform chemicals and fuels, including the world's first alternative jet fuel derived from industrial waste gases. Prior to LanzaTech, she was Vice President and General Manager of the Renewable Energy and Chemical Business of UOP. Jennifer has authored or co-authored 50 US patents and more than 30 scientific publications. She is on the Governing Council of Bioenergy Research Institute in India. The institute has been set up by Department of Biotechnology and Indian Oil Corporation. So we look forward to listening to you, Dr. Jennifer.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to join you today. I will continue to reinforce the comments that were made by the prior speakers, especially Professor Gupta, who made the comment that we really need to learn how to utilize waste. And in fact, at LanzaTech, we like to say that we believe in a post-pollution future, because we believe in a future where pollution is actually the feedstock that is used over and over again to make the products we need. If you will allow me to share my screen, here we go. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think we all know why we're here. Fundamentally, despite all of the IPCC reports, we continue to put carbon in our atmosphere. And we absolutely have to now bend this carbon curve. That's a very simple thing to say, but it's a very difficult thing to say. This is a picture of my dog, and everything that she's surrounded by, the foam in her bed, her toys, her collar, everything starts life as fresh fossil carbon, because we've developed an economy where we're used to taking petroleum out of the ground or natural gas out of the ground, converting it to everything we use, and then throwing it away either as emissions into our atmosphere or as trash into our piles. I think we need to really redefine how we think of carbon. We need to consider that all carbon is precious, and we need to lock it all away and only take it out where we absolutely need it. The reality is that energy already can be carbon-free. The levelized cost of electricity from renewables is equivalent to that from fossil carbons. But we will not ever be able to make chemicals the building blocks, the fundamental building blocks of everything we need without carbon. And aviation fuel as well requires, at least for the next 20, 30 years, the energy density of hydrocarbons. And so the question is not that we can get away from utilizing carbon, but rather that where the carbon we use comes from is really what will define our climate future. We firmly believe that all manner of pollution, whether it be gaseous pollution coming out the flue stacks, or solid waste, whether it be agriculture residue or municipal solid waste, can actually be the feedstock from which everything is made. We believe there's enough carbon already above ground to enable us to make everything that we need. In fact, to put it in perspective, only 9% of all plastic waste ever made has been recycled. That tells you just how much carbon we have in waste. And so we want you to imagine a world where all of this can be turned into the materials we need, enabling us to keep virgin fossil carbon in the ground. As an example, but only as an example, because there are many others, I will tell you what LanzaTech does in how we utilize waste resources. We are able to ferment gases, hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide, and we utilize these gases to make ethanol. We do this in a continuous bioreactor, one that looks a lot more like a refinery unit operation than the sugar fermentation that you're used to. Where do these gases come from? Industrial waste, gasified solids, or if you can use CO2, or as the prior speaker said, CO2 plus hydrogen, we can in fact convert these. We can make these into products such as materials or dense fuels. So we take the ethanol and we use it as a carrier of carbon and energy and convert it to other products. If you're making fuel, because of the fact that CO2 is emitted, we have an obligation to recapture it. And of course, anymore, we're not able to make dresses or anything else, apparel or plastic, without putting it back into the cycle through gasification. It's all about closing the loop. This is not science fiction. This is our first commercial facility that's operating in China at a steel mill, where we take carbon monoxide, a stream that's 40 to 60% carbon monoxide, pump it into our bioreactors and convert it into ethanol. This facility has been Roundtable for Sustainable Biomaterials certified, and we have already produced sufficient ethanol that we've captured almost 200,000 tons of carbon dioxide that would have come out the atmosphere. I think it's important to note that our second and our third commercial facilities are now operating. The second and third are at ferroalloy mills, but it's also very important to note that this company was founded in 2005 and that we've devoted more than 15 years to developing, scaling, and commercializing this technology. I point this out because we should never forget that scaling new technologies takes a tremendous amount of time. I want to say a few words about biology, because everything I've talked about to date is biology. Biology is quite different than thermocatalysis. I spent almost 25 years working on thermocatalysis. And while thermocatalysis are great and will continue to be extremely useful, I think that there are elements where biology will shine. And one of the most important parts where biology will shine is in the conversion of waste resources. Waste resources are by definition chaotic. And the reason for that, if they were not chaotic, if they were not mixed waste, they would probably not be waste. Single streams are seldom considered waste. But biology, like you and I, can process chaotic inputs. When we're on the road, our brains are able to interpolate what we see and make decisions about where we drive. Biology is the same. Our bacteria can take municipal solid waste, look at the carbon-hydrogen ratio, variability, and still make ethanol at a consistent clip. We verified this technology with Sekisui in Japan at an operating commercial gasifier that uses mixed waste. The reality is that there is unsorted waste here. So as you know, the carbon hydrogen ratio of plastic versus wood versus RDF varies. And that is why you see the variability. So it's very important to be able to process it without having to add another unit operation to either sort the waste in advance or to be able to adjust the carbon hydrogen ratio at the back end. We also see this in our commercial operation, where you can see that the gas varied the carbon monoxide from 40 to 60%, and you can see that the ethanol is produced. Of course, the yield of ethanol is reduced when you have less carbon, because of course you can only convert the carbon that is available. But there is no change other than the yield, which is based simply carbon in, carbon out. This is a unique feature of biocatalyst. I also believe that the hydrogen economy will be quite important. And when you look at the conversion of waste, our organism is able to make hydrogen through the water gas shift process. You can see when we only give it carbon monoxide, it is able to make the hydrogen. However, if you add hydrogen, then you can see that the organism doesn't need to make the hydrogen. And in fact, you get 100% carbon conversion to the ethanol. If you add carbon dioxide has no energy, as you know, and therefore hydrogen is required. It must be added to be able to make product. In the case of carbon monoxide, that is not the case, because carbon monoxide has both carbon and the energy for the organism. So the hydrogen economy, coupled with our ability to convert carbon resources like carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, is an important path in the future. However, today, as the hydrogen economy develops, we simply convert the carbon monoxide. We also can convert hydrogen from gasification. As you know, solid wastes are gasified to make syngas, carbon monoxide, or hydrogen of various ratios. This conversion of solid waste is critical because this is where the largest number of gallons will come from. Today, as an economy, we waste a lot of solids, whether they be agri-residues or municipal solid waste. And increasingly, this conversion is very important. We believe the conversion of agri-residues through gasification is quite important. In India, we have partnered with a local gasification company, Ankur Scientific, who has a tremendous amount of experience with gasification of solids. This is a tremendous opportunity in India, which will both impact the pollution in our air, because this agri-residue is often burnt, but also provide jobs to local farmers to bring back the solids. If you look at municipal solid waste, of course, our landfills are getting full. And as we discussed, the use of municipal solid waste, or the carbon in that municipal solid waste to make power, is actually quite a waste of a carbon resource. Instead, we believe that municipal solid waste should be recycled. This is a picture of our plant in Japan. You can see at the top right, the solid is just municipal solid waste being put in there. It is gasified at commercial scale, and we take a slipstream of that and we ferment it to make ethanol. The data I already have shown you, but I show it here again. A variation in the carbon hydrogen ratio that still results in excellent gas utilization and conversion to ethanol. Again, this is an important element of waste, that it will be and is in fact variable. At this plant, it's also important to note that we recycle 90% of the water. That is quite critical to note because of the fact that water is also a precious resource. We are building plants across the world using a variety of resources, everything from directly converting CO2 to steel, ferroalloy, refinery gases, etc. Our work in India is focused on bio and carbon capture utilization. I believe it's very important to leverage India's resources and to be able to create an own in-country economy and supply chain that uses its own feedstocks. Our partners in India start with Indian Oil. Indian Oil is building a plant that will start up in Panipat later this year that will take refinery off gas and convert it to ethanol. Indian Oil, however, is also even more an important partner for us because Indian Oil is also an investor in Lancetech, and Dr. Ramakumar, the director of Indian Oil's R&D, sits on our board of directors. We've also partnered with SED for a biomass to ethanol project. We will use Ankur gasifier, and we've done the same with MRPL. Importantly, we have also partnered with Indian Glycols, who is able to take our ethanol and convert it to MEG that we use to make polyester, and that we also made ethylene oxide from which we can make surfactants. As I said, I consider ethanol a building block. It is only the carrier of carbon and energy in these waste resources that are distributed. We can convert that to paraffins and isoparaffins for jet fuel, as well as, like I've said, materials. In the case of aviation fuel, it is a combination of a thermocatalyst process, which converts the ethanol to jet and diesel selectively, coupled with fermentation to make the ethanol. We developed this process with Pacific Northwest National Lab and the US Department of Energy, and we formed a company called LanzaJet to scale the technology. Suncor, Shell, Mitsui, ANA, and British Airways, as well as the Department of Energy, are investors. But the idea is by coupling these two, we take waste resources to jet fuel. The other reason we span out LanzaJet is because we believe that other ethanol resources that are being made by other companies that some would consider our competitors are also able to convert waste to ethanol. And in this way, we are able to also leverage their ethanol resources. Our fight is with our climate. Our fight is not with people that make the same type of products. And so we're very happy to launch LanzaJet and have LanzaJet partner to use other ethanol, not just ours. I think it's very important to remember that sustainable aviation fuel has some advantages over conventional jet fuel. It is not just about reducing carbon emissions. They have no sulfur, they have no aromatics. And so by blending at a 50-50 ratio with conventional jet fuel, using less aromatics, you see less particulate emissions, you see higher energy density, and a reduction in sulfur. I think it's important to point out that this also leads to lower contrails. And so there is an environmental justice issue associated with making sustainable aviation fuel that is mostly a synthetic paraffinic kerosene as opposed to a full kerosene. As I mentioned, you can also take this ethanol and make other products. Because we are making ethanol commercial scale already, we are able to also make products like Zara dresses, Unilever detergents, bottles for Migros, Mebel, and these are all already being sold commercially. And this all started life as recycled carbon ethanol. And I do want to stop for one moment and ask you to let your mind be blown by this, because I don't think anybody could imagine that a steel mill off gas would someday become a dress or a detergent. And so really it's about opening our minds to the future and to the things that we're able to make from waste resources. I want to just add that we don't want to stop at ethanol. The reality is that we can also program these microbes, and we've developed an entire toolbox to be able to modify gas-eating organisms with partners across the world. because we wanted to leverage the genetic capability and the genetic modification tools of sugar-eating microbes to adapt to our microbes. And by developing this capability, we've now able to show that we can make other molecules like acetone, isopropanol, or MEG directly. And by skipping the ethanol step, we're able to go directly to these products, which are also important building blocks. And so what we imagine is that these production facilities that use waste resources to make ethanol are really hardware, infrastructure, where the microbe that makes ethanol is software, and we can use those microbes to make other molecules in the same reactors. This is another advantage of biological processes, because the facility can only be used for multiple microbes, because these microbes can only stand certain conditions. The feedstock will be the same, the reactor will be the same, everything will be the same except the microbe. This allows you to use this facility as a toll manufacturing facility, such that when the price of one chemical is higher, within 10 days, you can be producing that chemical. This is very different than today, where we chase waves by building new hardware every time we want to make a new chemical. We've done quite a bit of work, especially with acetone and isopropanol, and this is something that we should be ready to commercialize next year. I would like to quote Buckminster Fuller, because I think it's really important. If we really are going to create a new carbon future, that we stop thinking about the same models, that we stop trying to create an economy that is identical to the one we have today, where instead of using distributed resources, we use centralized resources. Instead of using waste, we use single source feedstocks, and where we convert to products like ethanol or methanol that can carry carbon and energy. I do want to reemphasize that I do not believe that the solution I've discussed today is the only thing that is needed. Please understand that we will not be successful unless we leverage the collective brilliance of everybody that's listening to this presentation and across the world, and we use a variety of technologies and processes. At the end of the day, waste carbon is our enemy, and what we need to do is work together and collaboratively to find ways to convert it to everything we need. I ask you to rethink carbon. I ask you to rethink refining. For us, refining is refining waste resources, refining CO2, taking all of this to all of this. And I hope I've shown you that we're able to do that, and that the future will be based on that. And I invite you to consider that we need to get away from pollution, and that we need to think of pollution as our feedstock. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jennifer. A very interesting presentation. Completely assertion that you have in such an assertive mode that you're talking, every waste can be converted into useful material. That's a good challenge to the chemical engineers and the technologists. So with that, we conclude all the presentations. We have all the speakers available to take some questions. I would request, if anybody has questions, can please put it in the chat box and we will take it up for the discussion. So far, I have seen 2 questions here in the chat box. There's somebody asking about the utilization of jute along with or instead of plastics for some applications. If anybody wants to speak on that. And I'll also talk about second question which has been asked, so maybe if the speakers can answer those questions. Can we use pure carbon dioxide as feedstock to the process, or you need some carbon monoxide with it? If yes, how much? And how would you convert carbon dioxide to carbon monoxide? Though I think it was explained, but there's a question from the audience here. So please.
Yes. I can address Did you want me to address that?
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, so we can utilize, what we do is we take CO2 and hydrogen. As long as there's hydrogen, we can convert the CO2. There are people who are converting CO2 to CO via electrolysis. We can also use that instead. And you can also do some reverse water gas shift, but we do not need a stream of CO. We can convert, as long as there's hydrogen, CO2, the bacteria will eat the CO2. Actually, just for your information, actually, the way that it converts carbon monoxide is the carbon monoxide is actually converted to CO2 by the organism. It takes the energy out of the carbon monoxide and uses it as its energy resource, and it builds CO2 molecules. That is actually how it makes ethanol. It doesn't actually make ethanol from carbon monoxide. It uses the carbon monoxide as its energy source. So these organisms are very good at putting carbon dioxide together.
Thank you.
I can make a couple of comments. This is Ajit Sapre.
Yeah.
I mean, jute and everything else, of course we need, but we need something at scale. So to me, to solve the net zero climate change and all these challenges, we need multitude of solutions. There is no one single solution that fits the bill. And as I explained, the biology is going to be most critical going forward. And all the examples I gave you, I use actually pure CO2. I'm converting CO2 to anything you want, whether it is food, feed, proteins, biomaterials, you name it, right? It's an ultimate sustainability solution. Now, of course, being in India, we may not understand, because to me, the other important point that Jennifer made is that the high energy density is what we need. So we can talk about hydrogen, ammonia, and all those are solutions probably needed, but they're not going to fit all the solutions, to be blunt with you. At the end of the day, the oil, the renewable oil has the highest energy density. There's no other material in the world that is going to compete for ability to store, transport, long duration storage, long duration transport. So at the end of the day, we need to convert sunlight and CO2 to oil, renewable oil. You can do that with any organic waste is what? Municipal solid waste, your effluent treatment waste, your sewage treatment waste is nothing but the sunlight's energy captured into our food that got as a waste. If you convert that to oil, again, it's a stored energy. You can convert it to plastics, you can convert it to food, you can do whatever you want. So one of the things I really want to think out of the box is that let's not think about only solutions which are available. Let's think on our own and do some of our own solutions. Take some risk, do something on our own, okay? That's how India is going to progress, not just by following somebody else all the time. That's my simple message to all the young Indians. You can read whatever you want, you can listen to your seniors, but think on your own and be on your own feet. That's how we will progress.
Great, good comments. I don't see any more questions coming in the chat box unless the speakers who are on the panel here can ask some questions if they want to ask. The audience members cannot ask, they have to go through the chat box. But...
I can ask, I mean, look, I'm a big fan of hydrogen, ammonia, all these things, but to me, everything is going to be renewable hydrogen, ammonia. You have to store something, because today I need 1,500 tons per day of hydrogen to run my refinery. I need 500 tons per day of hydrogen to ammonia plant, okay? The sun doesn't shine all the time. And if you think about it, if I had to store this amount of material, even for 7 days to 15 days, because at Jamnagar, for instance, I have all the data on sunlight and what happens in the months of June, July, August, when it rains quite often, right? Amount of storage you need for electrification is not a solved problem. And if you think the batteries are going to solve that problem, you're going to be very, very expensive. And this is where multitude of solutions, and hydrogen could play a little role, but to me, a renewable oil will play a much greater role just because of its energy density. And this is completely out of the box because nobody's talking about it, but that's why I'm talking about it.
Great.
You can convert anything to oil, to be blunt with you. CO2, biomass, STP waste, agri waste, you name it. And we're converting it to hydrogen as well.
Thank you, Dr. Sapre.
So the only thought, if you can get, is that we need a highest energy density material to support economic growth at the 8% or whatever percent growth we want, to uplift 1.5 billion people out of poverty. They're not going to happen just by doing a lot of jugaad and some small innovations. They're needed, don't get me wrong, but we need major breakthrough inventions. if you want to uplift 1.4 billion people out of poverty. That should be our challenge.
Absolutely, well taken, well taken. I'm sure good message. I just want to ask one question to all the speakers, because whatever presentations you have made, it has been all recorded, and normally we would make it available to the audience, whoever requests for it. I hope the speakers do not have any objection to that, and it's available for sharing with the audience members here. Dr. Nand, you were saying something?
Yeah, there was a question in the chat box about the radioactivity in phosphogypsum. You know, this has been one of the these things. I just wanted to mention that uranium, most of it goes into phosphoric acid, and there has been technology developed by BARC for recovery of uranium from phosphoric acid. They had put up a pilot plant in Bombay at RCF premises. Somehow it was not successful. As far as phosphogypsum is concerned, there is a radium-226, and there is a requirement by AERB for quarterly monitoring of radioactivity. It is much, much lower than the recommended 1 becquerel per gram of radioactivity tolerance limit. And even then they have said that it can be then blended and used. So there is no permission required as such to use phosphogypsum for any of these applications as far as radioactivity is concerned. I thought that will, I to clarify that. Thank you.
There's one question here in the chat box. I would like to know about the ICT OEC technology, how much power it needs to get 1 cubic meter of hydrogen, and what is its efficiency as compared with alkaline and maybe SOEC.
Mr. Yadav is not here, looks like.
Dr. Yadav, are you around?
I don't think he's there.
Okay.
He said he will be leaving.
Okay, all right. So we'll put it on to him, and maybe he can reply by email. This has been asked by Mr. Jaswant Singh. Since it's being recorded, we will try and send it to the person. So if there are no other questions, maybe we can invite Dr. Malhotra to propose the vote of thanks. Dr. Malhotra, mechanical engineer basically, but he was with Indian Oil Corporation for a long time. He was director R&D, and then also officiated chairman for some time. And then he was director general of Federation of Indian Petroleum Industry. And he has been holding very important positions all over and received several awards and recognition for his contribution. And he's presently president of the Hydrogen Association of India also. So over to you, Dr. Malhotra.
Thank you, Mr. Sham. It's a pleasure to propose a vote of thanks on a webinar in a subject which is very, very important because it's not only the climate problem which we are facing. I think it's an emergency, as has been highlighted by many, that if we don't act now, we are going to, destroy. So first of all, thanks to our chairman, Mr. Chaturvedi, who has inspired all the trustees to come out with some programs, and Dr. Basu and Ajay Deshpande for putting this together and inviting some of the very, very prominent speakers in this webinar. Dr. Sapre, I've been hearing the emphasis he lays on the bio-oil. I think it is very impressive, Dr. Sapre, that you have been saying about the algae, converted to bio-oil, you have been emphasizing. And today you also mentioned that biomass gasification, which is 40% lower capex and opex, and renewable hydrogen, etc. I think it's a remarkable work being done by you, I must say. And the one thing which I particularly liked was you said about invent in India and make in India. I think that reminded me of how to find the distinction between invention and innovation. Where invention is the original work and innovation is improvement or making products out of it. Something good you mentioned, that we must look at those kind of things. Converting waste to useful products, plastic recycling, etc. I think remarkable issues you flagged. Ruchi Agrawal from TERI talked about sequestration of biogenic carbon and She also talked about climate economic action plan. Then Dr. Anjan, who brought a new perspective of bringing into the subject the bio-based lubricants for climate change and mitigation. I think Dr. Anjan, you reminded us that we need lube oil recycling when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about circular economy. Reuse is one of the important factor in circular economy. So resources reutilization. You reminded that we must recycle, and then whether we can make use of biolubricants, which although we had been talking about it, we have been developing these, but not the large scale usage has happened. So you flagged very rightly that issue. Dr. Nand spoke about a different subject, phosphogypsum, which it can be used for cement as a cement additive for soil amendment, building material, road construction, etc. As it's a gypsum board and wall panels we have heard, but something remarkable, which I honestly speaking, I didn't know that this polyphosphogypsum can find such advantage, such usages in various industries, and where the waste to utilization of products is very important. Professor Anil Gupta is a authority in himself, how to keep using waste materials. He gave several examples. One thing which I liked about him was he mentioned about students, must do the projects on bio-waste to material use, material which is useful. And one thing very important he touched was that it is not sort of the social issue or social solutions, but the economic solutions also must be found. Whenever we talk of circular economy, we do talk this we can do and that we can do. But economics is going to be very crucial. You cannot be forcing people with something, mandating something, but unless it is economical. Professor Yadav, he brought that he's already ready. I was amazed to see that he is ready with the technology along with ONGC Energy Center for $1 per kg of green hydrogen. I think we need to, quickly see those kind of plants coming up. He also said that the CSR 1%, that is quite good. That CSR we have been, our companies have been spending. So if they spend 1% on research labs, particularly on these kind of issues which are related to climate or circular economy, I think that's important. Dr. Jennifer is an excellent speaker. I know her from the days of my Indian Oil collaboration of our IOC Biotechnology Center, and remarkable work has been done under the guidance of LanzaTech people, and particularly Dr. Jennifer. Some of the innovative technologies have been developed, I know, that under that IOC DBT Center at Indian Oil R&D. And this company has really made IOC invest into LanzaTech. And some of the recent developments which she talked about was to convert, in innovative microbes which they have developed. They have been having a commercial plant in China for quite some time now. The plant for ethanol production in Panipat is also coming up, Panipat refinery. But innovative microbes for direct production of molecules used for various chemical products, which are the latest developments, and the aviation fuel, which is higher energy density, no aromatics, less sulfur. And 1 or 2 days back, I also saw the announcement by LanzaTech about CO2 conversion to ethylene. And if CO2 can be, converted into some of the useful petrochemicals, that would be remarkable for the whole world. That we have been looking forward to CCU technologies, which can convert carbon to useful chemicals. And LanzaTech is leading the world. Congratulations, Dr. Jennifer, and thank you very much for joining from USA at this hour. And thanks to all Mr. Shyam Bank for very nicely conducting the whole session. Mr. Shyam, you have done an excellent job, I must say. So thanks to all the audience also who have been patiently listening to all these presentations and have been participating with us in LKMT programs. For the last 3.5 hours, you have been with us. So thanks to all the participants. Over to Mr. Shyam Bank once again.
So thank you, participants, and thanks to all the speakers. And it's time for us to close. So thank you for the time frame that you have been able to manage within the time frame that we had scheduled. Thank you so much. We will close it now. Thank you.
Thank you.